Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 106 on SIFTD. I'm Shane Satterfield.
I'm Matt Kyle.
And we're here to bring you the biggest and the best in video games for the week. And Matt, we're starting to get into the heart of Q4 now. Mm-hmm. More games.
About time.
It is. More games than I can play right now.
Games, and more games.
Yeah, the codes just keep rolling into the inbox. We're going to talk about one game I've been playing on the show. I've also been playing South Park, The Fractured Butthole. I can't talk about that yet, but I am enjoying it, I'll say that much. And then they just keep rolling. I think it's on the 27th, there's 3 huge games that all come out at once.
Yeah, the 27th is Mario Odyssey, Assassin's Creed, and Wolfenstein 2 all at once.
Here we go, baby. I'm excited.
Which one? Which one first?
Yep. So, quick check-in on our Patreon. If you guys are watching this on the stream, or maybe you're catching us on YouTube, if you're really liking our content, please consider pledging some cash to our Patreon. It's creeping along right now. We're still kind of short of our goals, so any help you can give us, we'd really appreciate it. How's your week been, Matt? Sounds like it's been taken up by...
mostly orcs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's been taken up by one game in particular, and that's what we're going to kick things off with today, and that is Middle-earth: Shadow of War.
Which is a very generic title.
It is.
And very hard to Google for anything. I've noticed. Every time it's Shadow of War, this thing. It's no, it's just a bunch of random, RPG things. They should have named it something else. I don't know.
Yeah, it does pull up a lot of random results. Now, the first thing I would say, I've not played a lick of this yet, because like I said, I've been playing other stuff. I'm glad you've been playing it. The reviews started coming in, though, and they were a little lukewarm, and I got a little nervous about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I played about 30 hours of it. Which should tell you something right there.
Yep.
I think it's great. It is. I mean, the criticisms of it and the reviews are not wrong when they say that there's not a whole lot to do in the world other than relentlessly screw with orcs. But that's what we're here to do, and that's kind of the story. Is the writing great? No. I mean, it's just sort of Tolkien fanfic for the most part. The Shelob thing was a minor controversy where Shelob is a hot chick now or can become one.
Right.
It makes as much sense as anything in the Tolkien world. She's sort of being set up as sort of a dark mirror to Galadriel, and there's a whole thing where you piece together these memories of her relationship to Sauron back when he was the Lord of Gifts, the pretty version of himself.
Yeah.
Which you also saw in the first Shadow of Mordor. And there's a big reveal kind of what happened with there when you collect all the memories, and it's sort of exactly what you'd expect it to be. In the end, I didn't particularly mind it that much. You have to finish all the Shelob quests to get to the conquest part, which is only 4 missions.
Okay.
Which takes a while because there's some other missions you got to do in between, but it's very much front-loaded. And then once you because she takes the new ring from you at the beginning, and then once you get it back, you can start building the army and taking over the fortresses. So basically, you have to kind of go through this story sequence, Act 1 to get to Act 2, where the game really opens up and lets you start, building armies and playing war chiefs against each other and taking over fortresses and stuff like that.
Now, Matt, the first game was Game of the Year at some publications. A lot of people have played it, but I have a feeling that there are a lot of people who have not played it. Can you briefly explain the Nemesis system for people who may not have jumped on the first one?
So basically, each area, there's 5 areas in the game, as opposed to 2 in the first one. And each area has an army of orcs. And so there's captains. The majority of them are captains, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's 12 captains in each area. And so those are they're all named and they're randomly generated, but they all kind of have specific names and types that they are. There's assassins and there's hunters and there's tanks and there's different types of their roles, and then they have particular. Usually it's name the blank, and the blank determines kind of what dialogue they get.
Okay.
And so it's a big mix and match thing. So they all pop up, and you have to get intel from guys to figure out who's there. And then above them are the war chiefs. And in the first game, there were 4 war chiefs in each area, and those were kind of the guys you had to sort of. You can brand them or dominate them in this one, which turns them blue and makes them yours to command. And you can make them betray the war chief or like do whatever you want to do there, and like kind of control who becomes the next war chief and sort of manipulate the army so you have like an inside man basically.
Yep.
Now in the first game, that's where that stopped. Now in the new game, there are war chief. There's a various number of war chiefs depending on which fortress you're at, and each fortress has an overlord. So it's not. So you run around the open world map now with the Nemesis system, branding everybody and kind of setting things up how you like with the orcs. But then in the end, you still have to invade. You have to lay siege to the fortress, and that is like you pick all your leaders is like up to 6, I think, once you're fully leveled. And upgrades for them to attack, and then the enemy castle has their war chiefs defending the place. If you've branded them, they can be traitors, and you will instantly take over their points that they're holding, which is a lot of fun. But basically, you have to fight your way through this castle, and once you've taken all the points, it's like a battlefield game. Like you have to take like point A, point B, point C. And then once you've taken all the points, you can go into the main throne room, and you have a big fight with the overlord of the castle, which is usually just you against him and a whole bunch of his friends. And if you win, you get the castle. And then in the meanwhile, like the Nemesis system comes into play, where if you're ever killed by an orc, that orc gets promoted and levels up and remembers you, and you can go back and forth a lot because orcs can come back from the dead. It's called cheating death. So I had an orc in this one early on, who was vulnerable to fire. So once you get intel on them, you can see like their strengths. Some of them are immune to various things. Some of them are very vulnerable to some things. Some of them are instantly vulnerable to things. This guy was instantly vulnerable to fire. You set him on fire, he's instantly dead. So I blew up a fireplace and I set him on fire, and he instantly died. Great. And then about half an hour later, he shows up again, having cheated death. He's covered in burns now.
Wow.
And there's other people like where you'll see like they've because you can cut arms and legs and stuff off, and you cut arms and legs, and they'll come back with like wooden legs and like bionic arms and stuff, like machine arms and stuff. But this guy comes back, and now he is what I don't remember his name, but he was the Flame of War now.
Wow!
And he had two axes, and now they were on fire. And he gave me this big monologue about how he was afraid of the fire, and now he is the fire, and all this stuff.
That's incredible. That gives the player so much agency, and that's what really endears you to a game where you feel like you're actually impacting the world.
Right. And the thing about the real draw on this is the orcs, their interaction with each other, because there can be blood brothers and brothers where they'll come at you. If you kill one of the brothers, the other one will come after you and ambush you out of nowhere and yell at you for killing their brother.
Wow.
One of them actually ambushed me and was angry he had to do this because he didn't even like his brother. But now I got to do this. What a bother. And there was another one where I got killed. I was in a big fight and I just happened to get killed. The last hit was a random orc, not a captain. It was just a random orc, and that orc suddenly got promoted to be a captain because he killed me.
Right.
And he named himself the Tark Slayer. Tark is their word for basically Gondorians. Okay. Humans. And then I went and found. After you get killed by one, you can have a vendetta mission where you go back and take revenge and kill them again. And then that one guy with the flame of war, that guy, we killed each other back and forth 6 times. He kept coming back and leveling up and getting stronger. He became legendary, which is the purple orc. So he would drop better loot, but he had all these immunities, and basically at some point the only thing that could hurt him was a particular kind of arrow or something, a fire thing or something. It was weird. He was immune to fire. He was immune to frost.
Is that because you had defeated him so many different ways prior?
If you do the same move to them enough, they learn it. And so if you do the thing where you hop over their head, eventually they'll learn that you do that, and they'll push you off. And you can't do it anymore. So eventually you have to keep coming up with new and different ways.
It sounds like the game could eventually become impossible.
No, they always have at least one, and you can always usually do at least 1 or 2 different types of normal damage to them. So basically you just got to get creative. And at that point, the biggest problem becomes the fact that they usually come with a bunch of followers. So you're trying to deal with this dude, and there's little guys running out, and you can counter them pretty well. But when you're countering them, you're not paying attention to the war chief, and he can come at you. So this
isn't like Assassin's Creed where they take turns attacking you.
No, only 2 will attack you at once that you can counter, but I've been attacked by more than that, and stuff happens all over the place. I am playing it on Nemesis difficulty, which is the highest, because I thought the first game was way too easy. And if you're not dying in this game, you're not seeing the Nemesis system at its best.
Right.
So
yeah.
you want the. So I can take like 2 or 3 hits from the big guys, the powerful guys, and that's about right.
Yeah.
I think. So I've died a fair number of times, and like that makes it more interesting that like you get these guys that level up special ways and they learn various things. But really I don't know how they packed all the dialogue for the orcs into this game, because it's like it's constant, and I'm 30 hours in. I've heard maybe 3 repeat lines.
Wow.
And like that's mainly from guys who have come back to life and had the same dialogue
right.
again. And like there was the Tark Slayer guy. I went and killed him. I went into the Vendetta to kill him. And he's like, oh, you crazy? Don't you know I'm the Tark Slayer and you're a Tark? And like, and I killed him.
Right.
And then as I'm killing him, he's like, that's impossible. You can't slay me. And I was like, so I kill him. And then he came back later, like, you know, having cheated death again, and he walks in his big intro. He's like, well, sometimes you get the Tark, and sometimes the Tark gets you. Am I right? And I was like, it's the way they remember what happened is amazing.
That is incredible.
And then at one point I ran into it, because you'll just hear them talking. They'll talk to each other while they don't know you're there. And one of them was talking about how he decided to start using... reusing his death threat lines, because he's going to kill the person, so who cares if he uses it, because no one's going to know you're reusing that line because you kill whoever you say it to. But he's like, but then he cheated, the guy he killed cheated death and came back, and then I used the same line, I didn't realize it, and then he started telling everybody else that I reuse my own material over and over again. He's just like, oh,
so the game is
so
like
it's making fun of its own.
Yeah,
it's making fun of the fact that eventually you hear the same lines over and over. The story is kind of bland, but like the fact that like you just run around and relentlessly screw with these orcs and like...
Is it offensive to people who are maybe big Lord of the Rings fans?
Yeah, but everybody's...
It is offensive. It's that bad.
I mean, it doesn't fit in the timeline.
Okay.
Like it's fan fiction. It's like it's clearly an alternate timeline for the Lord of the Rings. Like it doesn't... there's no way to reconcile what's in the books with what happens in this game.
Okay.
Like there is no way some random undead Gondorian ranger like raised an entire Bright Lord army and took over Mordor, and then had Mordor taken over back again by Sauron, and then everybody went on like nothing happened.
Right.
Know? Like it's
Is it so bad that someone who maybe is more a Lord of the Rings fan than a game fan would be put off by it?
I mean, not unless you consider Lord of the Rings holy scripture.
Okay.
I mean...
Because, there are lots of people who maybe buy one or two
Force
games
Unleashed
a year.
doesn't make any sense either in terms of, like, fitting with the Star Wars story and stuff. I mean, it's just a game that takes some liberties with the source material to make it a better game, really. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I'm not a huge fan of the books to begin with, so...
Now, what about if you hadn't... I know this is crazy, but what if you had never heard of Lord of the Rings in your life, and you just were consuming this story all on its own discreetly? How does it fare
You wouldn't
there?
know what half of this stuff is.
Really?
It's all about the rings and Celebrimbor and the Forger of the Rings and who Shelob is and Sauron. And I mean, if you don't know the mythology, you're going to be a little lost in who all these people are.
Uh-huh.
There's an appendix that kind of tells you who everyone is. It's fine, but like you're not here for this story. You're here to mess with orcs.
Yeah.
And take over these castles. And like so, once you take over a castle or a fortress, you can then go. There's an icon where you can go take over an online fortress. And what it is when you take over, you put an orc that you control as the overlord and as the war chiefs. You can assign your other orcs as bodyguards for those war chiefs, and you can upgrade the castle in various ways. And other players can come fight your castle. It doesn't impact your game, and you don't impact their game. But basically, it's like it's like asynchronous, like multiplayer, like Clash of Clans or whatever.
Yeah.
And so basically, you're kind of testing your defense setup against their offense.
But it's also good because it means that it's not an appointment type online mode.
Right,
Yeah.
and you can see a record of who's tried to attack you, whether you won or lost. So some of these fights are real interesting because basically the siege stuff is really cool. And you can set things up however you want and do these upgrades. So like I was doing the second fortress a couple times to get the daily challenge out of the way because you had to do 2 ranked fights. And the first one I just rolled over it. It was just like, roof, boom, done. Second one, we load in, and I'm like, okay, there's things. What are those things on top of the castle towers there? And it's grogs with fire catapults on their back, which you see early you see those early in the main game, but I hadn't seen them in multiplayer, in online before. And so they just start flinging flaming catapult rocks at us, and 2 of my captains were killed like just getting to the front gate. And one of them was the guy I used to break the front gate down.
Oh, wow.
So I had to climb up and take one of those catapults over and use it to destroy the other catapult, and then we moved on in. And that guy also, that player had figured out how to use the bodyguard system, because you can assign other orcs up to 4 per war chief to be their bodyguard. So each war chief has like a capture point that they guard. And if you have bodyguards assigned them, those bodyguards will show up with them. So instead of fighting 1 war chief, you're fighting 5.
Right.
Like named orcs, which is a tough fight.
Yeah.
And I did win that fight, but it took, where normally, because you get timed on it. So like you have a gold medal completion, silver. So the higher you get, the better the reward, the loot chest you get at the end of it. So
and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. So you want to do it fast, but there was no way to do this fast. Like it was a just back and forth struggle. Like my guys would go down, and I'd pick them back up, because if one of your guys goes down, you can, they'll bleed out, and you have to resurrect them, and kind of like Gears of War or whatever. And so it was a pitched battle, and it was a lot of fun. Like I can see myself going back when I'm done with this game. I can see myself going back and playing those online battles over and over, because I really enjoy it. I wish Dynasty Warriors was more like that. Yeah. Like it feels real good.
Do you think that this game in general is something that you can kind of go back and play again? Because it sounds like you have some flexibility in how you...
I think so. Look, I'm 30 hours in. I think I'm like 50% complete.
Oh, wow.
According to the thing.
Holy cow,
I still have a whole bunch
huge.
of stuff. I've only conquered 2 out of 5 fortresses.
You're not even halfway there then.
No, I've done all the collectibles and all the things like that, but I'm still working my way through the second half of the quests. I haven't even hit that end game, the Shadow War, where basically you conquer everything and then Sauron pushes back, and that's where everybody's worried about the loot boxes thing. And I have not needed to buy anything. Maybe because I'm not at that end game point yet, but I have plenty of legendary orcs running around that I've just found and branded in the main game world. And you also doing the daily and weekly challenges, you get the gold that's the real money currency from that, and you can buy. I have enough gold from just playing the game right now that I could buy all the special this week only loot boxes, because the loot boxes they do special per week is there's an assassin box and a poison box. So you're guaranteed to get that type of orc out of them.
Well, at least you know what you're getting there.
Right. You can buy.
The big complaint with loot boxes is you don't know what the drop rates are. Essentially.
Well, you can also buy random blind box ones, which are and the different levels are I think it's silver, gold, and mithril, and they're the more it says the mithril one is I think it's guaranteed 1 legendary orc and 2 3 orcs, 1 will be legendary, and 2 pieces of gear or something. So you more or less know you're at least getting one thing. But look, I've not felt it's too early to use it really, because the boxes are clearly tied to your level, and there's no reason to open to want to use any boxes or buy any boxes until you're way higher level than you are going through the story. You clearly can complete the main story on this without any help.
Isn't it interesting that pretty much all the discussion about this game leading up to its release was about loot boxes? Mm-hmm. And since the game has come out, I have not heard a peep about the loot boxes in this game.
Not a lot, no.
Nothing. I see it all, obviously. With curating for SIFTD, it's we see all the content for every publication. Yeah. I've not seen a single biting editorial talking about it.
Because it's a non-issue.
Do you think it was false outrage, or do you think that because of the outrage, they ultimately went back and tweaked the game?
No, there's no way they tweaked this. It's an option right there. If you want to open any boxes, whether you earn them through real money or not, you have to go into the market thing and open them in that thing. That's also where you keep the orcs you get from the boxes, and then when there's this blank space in an army in an area, you can put that orc in that space. So the interface for that all works through the market tab. I don't think it's any different than it was, and they said they tested it without the loot boxes turned on, the manual loot boxes turned on, and I believe that because it gives you enough from just playing the game that I've got 30 or so orcs sitting in the legendary and epic orcs just sitting in the reserve group there just from playing online stuff, and it's not hard to get these things. It's not as Injustice 2 would just shower loot boxes on you. It's not that generous, but I don't feel like I'm short of useful orcs. And maybe that'll change,
Right.
in the end game, because I haven't gotten there yet, and I will certainly tell.
Well, you're also playing on the hardest difficulty settings,
right?
So.
I mean, I haven't had a problem with any of that, but like, I'm not at the point where anybody's trying to reinvade my fortresses yet. So I don't know how that's rolling.
How does the graphics engine hold up? Because obviously, when you have that many characters on screen, the detail on the characters is impeccable. Does it hold up? Does the engine run smooth?
Yeah, I'm playing on PC. Everything's auto. I mean, I use recommended settings for what get auto detect thing. Put everything on ultra. It's at 1440p, and I haven't seen a damn frame rate drop probably the whole time. Like, it's even with like the biggest fight I've had outside of the sieges was I went to kill a captain, and it sometimes if you have your captains, I'm not sure what the thing. I think if you have the captains branded and like the game wants to unbalance the area because there's no more room to put new enemy orcs in, they'll have your orcs that you've converted to your side betray you. And at one point, I was in like an encampment thing trying to hunt down this other guy, and I was in a fight with him, and suddenly 4 of my captains showed up and all betrayed me at the same time.
Oh man!
So it was. So I basically got ambushed by my own guys while I was trying to fight another guy, and they brought their armies and their group in there, and it was just complete chaos, and it never hitched once. I mean, it runs real. I was worried because the first game ran real smooth, but that's a 3-year-old game, and I was like, well, I hope they haven't like beefed it up to the point that it gets a little like chuggy or anything. But I haven't not a single performance problem at all. And this is, the PC version usually gets shafted by Warner Brothers. Let's not forget.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, their PC ports are usually terrible.
But this is rock solid. Like no complaints from the technical side of things.
It sounds like you have very few complaints in general.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're loving it.
Yeah, I am. I am, but the reviews aren't wrong when they say the open world is not. There's nothing to do, because there isn't. There's nothing to do except kill things and conquer things. Like there is no. And collect, little trinkets, but that doesn't take too long. Like, it's not like an engaging sort of like, oh, there's this variety of things to do. It's like, this game is doing one thing. No
NPCs, I'm guessing.
Right.
Yeah.
Not really. Like, other than your orcs that are fighting with you. But they do have a lot of personality. So, like, last night, I was just about to do the push to conquer the second fortress, and I ran into one of the war chiefs was, I can't remember his first name, but he was something the Bard. And he's got a little pirate hat on, and he comes out and he's got a club, and he flips in his intro thing, he flips the club around, and it's a lute, and he sings a song about how he's going to kill me. And I'm like, oh, you are going to become Overlord, sir. So like, he's adorable. Like it was, and so he fought him, and you do the thing, you break him, and then you drain him, and you can brand him and make him your follower. And so I did, and then I took over the fortress, and I made him Overlord, and now he has a gold lute. Because the Overlord gets like some gold, extra stuff on him, and gets a little cooler. And it's just like stuff like that, where I've got that guy, I've got this other guy I got who is his name is his title is the Sweet, and he's constantly nervous and afraid of everything, and he apologized to me the first time he tried to kill me, and I'm like, oh, you are also adorable, and you are going to be protected as well. Like, I pick certain orcs that I think are cool or are funny or whatever. And it's like you get attached to these guys, and like because that's the thing is also when you do like open world missions, time passes. So each of these missions has like 3 pips underneath it, and each time you do a mission, one of them goes away. And if you run out of time, it auto resolves. So if you have any of these followers that you want to keep around, you should show up to those missions and make sure you help them and make sure they don't die. So you've kind of got this responsibility thing going on now with if you have favorites to kind of like keep track of and stuff. It's it's doing that one thing. That Nemesis system is doing that one thing, and it's doing it incredibly well. Everything else is pretty middle of the road, I would say. But the combat is, the other thing is like they redid the combat to some degree, so you are not invincible anymore like you were in the first game. It was real hard to die.
Yeah.
You could chain stuff together, you could control crowds real easy. This one, you don't automatically quickly build, the execution finishers are not tied to your combo meter, which was kind of the god mode last time. They're tied to a meter that fills up with rage, like a wrath meter. So you can't just insta-kill everybody all the time. I am playing on Nemesis, but like I have to run away way more often than I ever did in the first game. So the challenge is there. I would say it's not afraid to just beat you down There's been a couple of times where I'm like, that's not fair, but of course it's not fair. You're fighting 1,000 orcs.
Right,
You know? It's
yeah. It's never going to be fair.
But that's kind of the learning part. Is, I mean, I would really, if you are competent at action games, especially hack and slash stuff, or you played the first game, you should play this on Nemesis difficulty, because that is, I think it shines.
So crank it up.
Yeah, it's just hard enough to be a challenge in places when you get to the really high level guys, and you'll die probably enough to get the Nemesis system really kicked into gear and get a couple of rivalries going, and that's when it's really good.
Why do you think? I mean, is it really just the empty open world? Because the first game was that way. Why do you think this game is being received, not negatively, but why is it not being as well received as the first?
I don't know. I mean, it's better than the first, for sure.
I mean, all the reviews say that.
Yeah.
But it's just...
Well, it's a stronger year to some degree, which I think can color opinions when it comes down to it.
Shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but it does.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
I mean, it doesn't. Look, it doesn't.
Because some of the sites start looking down the road at the game of the year, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want people at the end of the year saying, oh,
right.
you gave this an 8.
Well,
you gave
because
this a
look,
9.
if we're being honest, the Game of the Year awards are all going to Mario and Zelda.
Yeah, probably.
That's it. Like, it doesn't matter how good your game is. If you are not Zelda or Mario, you are not winning Game of the Year, except for a couple probably like PC, like Rock Paper Shotgun will probably give it to PUBG,
right?
Because which is bullshit. But like, what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
Early access games should not win Game of the Year. I don't think.
Maybe we should have that discussion sometime.
But like, I'm sure when December rolls around,
I'm
sure there'll be plenty of podcasts about that. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Walking Dead argument all over again and backwards.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, how can Walking Dead win? Because as well as presentation. Well, how can PUBG win when it's so shitty presentation? Because it's all gameplay. You know. So it's the flip side of that. And when you really get down to it, if you're really like talking about the medium as how games work, PUBG should be the stronger argument than Walking Dead there.
Oh, yeah.
Because gameplay is gameplay.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas Walking Dead, I don't think really looks very good anymore.
No, and that's what it won Game of the Year on, was its presentation, and now...
Now, I do think, as much as I love Shadow of Mordor, I think it won a lot of those Game of the Year awards just because it was a weak year.
It was a weak year, yeah. It kind of won by default.
Shadow of War is in a much tighter competition, but this is the most fun I've had with just about anything this year since Zelda and Horizon. And I'm a sucker for open world, like hacky things with a bow and arrow, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, like, look, I'm not gonna lie. It's like, this is up my alley already. But the Nemesis system is just like nothing else, and it astounds me no one has stolen this.
Still like nothing like anything else.
No one has stolen this idea. And like Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft, if you want Assassin's Creed to be a thing, use this, steal this. Because look, the people that made Shadow of Mordor wanted to make this Assassin's Creed 3, and Ubi wouldn't do it. So they went to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers like, make whatever the hell you want. So they made this is what Assassin's Creed could have been.
Ubisoft is afraid that Bluehole's going to sue them.
Yeah.
They'll just jump in for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, how about the other... Look, but not even like just Assassin's Creed. It's like, if you could come up with something like that system that would make Ghost Recon Wildlands playable forever.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Like, it's a great idea, and I don't know how they got all the voice acting in this game. It's like...
How big is the download file for the game?
It was...
Well, you're on PC, so it's going to be bigger anyway.
Yeah, 67 gigs.
Oh, it's not bad. And the voice doesn't sound compressed?
No, I don't notice, no.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not playing with headphones. I'm playing with like a Bose system, but it sounds good to me.
Wow.
I mean, all the voices are under a pretty, they're under orc filters. Or like, but like, yeah, it sounds fine.
Sounds like it's pretty easy to recommend this game for a purchase.
I would definitely say so. I mean, there's a lot of
length, the asymmetrical multiplayer.
There's a lot of
compelling.
game there. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I still just love, like, doing the intel stuff and revealing each orc and seeing what they look like and seeing what they, it's picking deciding which ones will live and die, deciding which ones will be promoted, which ones I'll add to my army, and which one I'll just cut the head off. Like, yeah, and sometimes it's as mercenary as like, oh, that guy's gonna give me good loot because he's high level and he's purple, and sometimes it's like, oh, I need a purple guy in my army, I'll brand him and keep him with me, but it's like, and there's a lot of stuff with with the loot in the game. So like, you've got different, you have a sword, dagger, bow, armor, cloak, and your ring, and so you can get different rarity, different types. They all have different special effects, and each one has, like, once you get to the yellow and above, have a little quest with them, and you have to go do a certain thing a number of times. And when you do that, you can upgrade them, and you get an extra special effect on them. So you can customize your equipment to kind of suit your play style. So I have a thing where, like, if I daze a captain, I get some arrows back automatically. And I have a thing where if I get a critical hit, I get 22% of my health back. And so you customize it that way. I have a thing where if I get hit, there's a 33% chance that the orc who hits me will be poisoned. And so there's a ton of stuff with that. You can customize them further with gems that give you bonus things. So there's a lot of stuff in there to kind of farm for loot and for gear. And all that stuff is shown on the character, whereas in the first game, you could change I think there were 7 or 8 different outfits you could unlock, but there was no loot appearance on the character. The only weird thing there is a lot of the major story sequences are pre-rendered cutscenes. And while they are 4K, are 4K gorgeous. He's in his normal outfit,
right.
Which is it's weird to me when a game that focuses on loot customization so much.
In 2017, that's a little funky.
Yeah. But every once in a while, there's a thing where it's like, okay, you probably could have done that in real time. When the Balrogs show up and there's a forest creature thing that shows up that's probably like a little outside of the engine's capabilities in real time. But it's just like, it's a little jarring where suddenly he's back in his like ratty old Gondor outfit and
especially
stuff.
when you work so hard to...
Right. I got him dressed up like in dark gear, so he's got like a hood. He looks like an assassin, basically.
Yeah.
Even in this game, I tried to make him look like an Assassin's Creed character. I don't know. Oh, whatever. But there's a lot to love in here if you're really just I wanted a looty, hacky, slashy Nemesis system orc abusing simulator.
Well, I'll say this much: I had looked at this game, and the reviews kind of started coming in, and I was like, oh, they're not great, they're not sky high. So I knew how many just this month how many games are coming out, and I kind of mapped out the month, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play that game. But now after talking to you about it, it's kind of bumped up my list a little bit.
I would probably play other things, in preparation for talking about them on this show. But if I wasn't on a show that talked about video games, I would be totally content just playing this game until Mario came out.
Right.
This would be my October, and I just grind away at this game and have fun doing it.
Pretty glowing impressions.
So I'm super happy with it. I don't really disagree with the criticisms that the reviews have made of it. But if you read those criticisms, you're like, yeah, I don't expect anything more. I just want cool orc stuff and the Nemesis thing. I wouldn't hesitate. And the only downside is, people want to wait for the DLC sometimes, but it looks like the DLC is going to be separate mini campaigns with other characters. I would certainly have preferred it to add on new fortresses to conquer, but what are you gonna do?
Look, you got 30 hours.
Yeah, it's not.
You're
it's
not
not
even
like
halfway there.
It's not like you're short of it. But I'm just saying, if they wanted to expand this into kind of an ongoing platform, I would buy new fortress area. You want to expand out to the whole of Middle Earth and just move into the south and move into the east and make up some more shit because we're in crazy territory here. There's
I would not be surprised if that happens.
I would be totally on board with that.
Probably going to turn into another game as a service.
Yeah,
which we'll also talk about a little later.
I'd be down for that more because I'm not a big fan of just separate add-on campaigns. I like it when the DLC adds to the main game.
Yeah.
The only exception to that is probably Freedom Cry from Black Flag. I thought that was a really good mini campaign, but I like that character already.
Right.
And in this game, I don't have any interest in playing any other characters because I don't care about them.
Right.
I'd rather just have more castles.
Yeah.
But if that's what kind of does it for you, if you look at kind of the conquest stuff in this game and you think that looks cool, it is cool, and you will like it. I think people would dig it.
All right. We're going to move on. Next, we're going to talk about, and for I believe the third episode in a row, we're going to talk about toxic players in video games. It's a hot topic, and I think it's a hot topic, Matt, because publishers are struggling trying to figure out how to deal with them. So there's different types of toxicity. There's a griefer who tries to ruin the game for others. Mm-hmm. There's the guy who is verbally abusive. And then there are cheaters. And what has turned out to be the biggest problem and the hardest one to solve is cheating. It appears that Epic Games has decided to try a new tactic to, I wouldn't say thwart cheaters, but perhaps deter cheaters. And it has sued 2 players who have been cheating in Fortnite.
Yeah, good luck with that.
What do you
sue them for? What? I don't.
Ruining the game for others. I don't
think there's anything on the books for that.
Well, it depends on what's in the end user licensing agreement.
True.
And no one reads those. There was the one, I think it was The Simpsons, that did the whole thing on the iTunes, EULA, where it's like basically if you actually read it, it's like you've just given away your firstborn child to Apple when you have your first kid. Nobody reads these things, so they can be loaded with pretty much anything.
But like the courts know that, and the courts can say like no one can be reasonably expected to read these things, so you can't like tag someone on some weird specific thing you buried in there. Like it's I mean the idea is probably that like the people they're suing will not have the money to fight it and will just have to back down. And I guess it's it is a scare tactic, I would say. I don't think it's going to solve anything because clearly the people that do things like this do not think they're going to get caught.
But
or suffer repercussions.
I saw today that Bluehole is banning 13,000 players a day from PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Not really that many people when you consider how many people are playing that game.
It is, but still, that's a lot of people. It's still 13,000 people. That's a whole basketball arena full of people, basically, a day.
So have they hired like a whole separate team to do that?
They have to. There's no way you could do that unless you have some kind of code.
I mean, they have been expanding. Like Bluehole is playing the game right, as far as I can tell. Like they're not just like sitting back and accumulating piles of cash. They are expanding their business.
But look, we saw Blizzard.
So I'm sure that was part of their expansion.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Blizzard. How I think it was 3 or 4 episodes ago. We were talking about how Blizzard basically reached out to the community and said, "Hey, like, please stop being jerks. We're spending so much time dealing with the jerks in our game that it's keeping us from creating new features for the game or new modes, new characters, whatever." And that doesn't work. The banning obviously doesn't work. But do you think that, one, personalizing it, because look, these 2 players, people know who they are. They are just 2 out of 13,000. These are people who have been named and are now out in the public as cheaters, essentially. Do you think even if this won't hold up in court and it's not legally binding, that it might be the most effective way to deal with cheating?
No.
You don't? You don't think the deterrent of getting your name dragged through the mud in public or potentially having to either spend a ton of money on lawyers or actually going to court if it goes that far and losing a ton of money that way, you don't think that's a big enough deterrent for people to maybe...
No.
Look, the worst of the worst, they're going to do it.
Because people don't think they're going to get caught. Like, that's the whole point.
But don't they wonder, how did these people get caught?
Well, because they were stupid, and these people, the people that want to do it now, they're super smart. And
they think they are.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they think they are.
Like that. It's called Dunning-Kruger syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the burglar thing. So that would never happen to me. You know, it's like, well, I'm careful. You know, it's like, no, like it still happened. But it's not a deterrent because people don't think of this as some kind of like legal issue. You know, I guess like the idea would be to kind of convince people to start thinking of it as that. But like, you can't go around and sue everybody who uses an aimbot. You know, I think cheating is just going to be part of the online gaming experience, and we have to just work around it as best we can. Like, it's been a problem since we first started using modems to play Doom. Like, it's not going away. I appreciate them trying to find new ways to curb it, but I just don't think you can stop people from being jerks.
You don't think there's any way to stop it? You think this is just
not 100%.
Something that we're going to have to deal with forever in playing online games?
Yes, to some degree. That's not to say you shouldn't take measures to try to stop it. Obviously, I mean, it's like there's no reason to do nothing, but anyone expecting this stuff to kind of kill it completely is fooling themselves. Here's
what I wonder, and I've always wondered: how can a developer like Epic or Bluehole find 13,000 people a day that need to be banned, but they can't catch everybody? Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, because I guess it's a moving target, more or less.
Is it? Are they just like altering the code just enough so that it jumps through the filters that the developer's trying to use to catch people?
I don't know any specifics about that, so I don't know what they were looking for.
Yeah.
You can only do so much.
Yeah, I don't know. To me...
And there's always some new thing, and people are trying to, crack into these things are fast. I mean, they broke the de novo copy protection on Shadow of War in a day.
Yeah.
And already there's a way to use a cheat engine to jump into Shadow and give yourself infinite silver or infinite whatever the silver coin occurs. And you can buy loot boxes with that. Uh-huh. Not the good ones, but you can just buy the low level ones over and over and over forever until you get, eventually the random number generator is going to give you some good stuff. So you're kind of short circuiting that real money system already by doing that. And they figured that out in 24 hours.
I think DRM... At this point, publishers should wise up and just ditch it.
Yeah.
It's more of a hindrance than it is.
Well, I think the more effective DRM is going to be stuff where you tie people into like the game as a service idea. You know, like, and I think a lot of development. I've already seen a couple developers say like, we don't care nearly as much about you stealing the game as long as you're still buying the content later.
Right.
You know, as long as you're still paying for the you know, if you're a whale, we don't care if you steal the game, as long as you still, you know, are involved in the transaction later. Like, that's where the real money is made.
Well, Patrick kind of recently made that argument in Pactor Factor. He was saying that if it were up to him and he was a publisher, if you're going to create a game as a service, you just give the game away. Mm-hmm. And don't even charge the $60 for it, because the whales are still going to spend the same amount of money they always spend. Mm-hmm. And the people who are going to pirate it, like you just mentioned, are still going to buy the extra content.
I mean, imagine that world where, like,
and you're exposing the game to literally millions and millions of more people.
Imagine that world where Shadow of War is free.
Right.
And people buy enough, you know, the whales buy enough loot boxes that people like you and I can just play it.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty neat.
I'm surprised to hear you say that you don't think that actually taking someone to court is no deterrent at all.
It'll be a deterrent for that person. But like,
then why do we have laws? I mean, our laws and the police and the courts are all there. They're not there because they want to prosecute everybody. They're there so that other people see what happens to other people, and it deters them from that behavior.
And it doesn't deter the people that still do that. So the reason they're also there is to deal with the people who are not deterred. So there will always be someone doing something wrong in that regard. You just need to have the system there to deal with it. I don't know if suing them is really the active move there.
It's also
worth a shot.
For Epic. I mean,
it's worth
Epic
a shot.
has to pay its lawyers as well.
Let's see what happens. You know, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but I am a firm believer in the theory that there will always be dicks.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean like no laws or no.
Well, yeah, there are always going to be dicks. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But I think.
But like, if anyone is saying like, oh, one day we will get to the point where all our online gaming experiences will be jerk free, like it's not going to happen.
But see, I look back at like the T. Martin case where he was running the CS:GO skin site and was totally lying about it to his users, and they were getting suckered into going there and spending money. The fact that he faced no real consequences for that whatsoever, other than maybe being stressed out for a few months over it, but ultimately really didn't have to pay any kind of a price for it. To me, I think that matters. Like, I think other people will look at that and say, well, he didn't even get a slap on the wrist, so what's going to keep me from doing it? Like, so you think do you agree with that? Do you think that some people will look at that and say, oh, I can get away with that because they didn't actually get in trouble?
Yeah, probably.
So you think it's just a one-way street then? Where if people are punished, it doesn't matter, but if they get away with it, it does.
I could see that. I mean, I could definitely see, like, you know, maybe a couple of people would be deterred by the idea if T. Martin had gotten paid some real legal consequences, that people are like, oh, I'm not going to deal with that. But, like, you know, there's always going to be someone that still does it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think this would ever no law is ever going to wipe out crime 100%. It's just not. You're going to have people who are going to be criminals no matter what. But there are people kind of on the fringe who still have kind of a conscience.
Right, but I mean, we're not.
It's like, I don't think all game pirates are like bad people.
Right, but we're also not talking about murdering another human being. We're talking about cheating in an online game, which is just not a moral choice for most people. It's like, like a lot of people wouldn't do it not because of any moral decision, but because like that's not how the game is played, and they want to play the game the way the game is played. But there are people who don't care about that, and that's not. I mean, call that unethical if you want, but like. That person is never going to occur to them to even weigh that decision in their head. It's just that's how they play. That's what's fun to them, is making sure they win at all costs. I played Monopoly with people that are like that.
Yeah, I played Risk with people that are like that.
Risk is another good example, yeah. And like, I just don't, you know, and I guess maybe like if Epic finds a way to get some of this to stick, it could, you know, if there was a chance of being nailed for wire fraud if you cheated the bank in Monopoly, yeah, maybe people would do that less.
Matt, do you think the rise of esports has caused an increase in cheating? Because people back in the day, before esports, you couldn't actually make money playing video games. Mm-hmm. There wasn't much incentive to cheat.
Oh, yeah, there was.
I mean, other than you just want to win.
Yeah,
but now,
that's all the incentive people need.
But now there's this carrot dangling on the stick of, if you're good enough and you get noticed in the community and your scores are sky high, all of a sudden, you never know. Your phone rings, you get that email saying, "Hey, we saw your stats." Like,
I don't think that has as much to do with it as you might think.
You don't think the kids out there have stars in their eyes, man, hoping that they're the next?
It's not going to help you when you get there,
right? But I don't think that they care about that.
Somewhat, but if that was really the driving force, I would not have seen as many cheaters as I did in Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 on PC was, I don't know if I ever really... I have a friend who doesn't think he ever saw a non-invincible person invade his game.
Really?
Like, cheating in Dark Souls 1 was hilariously rampant. And there's no benefit to that.
No, it's just people with Dark Souls, basically.
Yeah.
Literally, people with Dark Souls.
People with Dark Souls. There's no pro Dark Souls scene. There's no money to be made there.
Right.
People just want to be invincible. Yeah. People just want to have that power.
But that's one level. We're talking about 13,000 people a day here that are getting busted for cheating.
But to some degree, there's almost 2 million people playing that game a day. Yeah. So 13,000 is not really that many people when you look at the volume that PUBG is dealing with.
It's like less than 1% or whatever.
That's not too bad, really. I mean, it's kind of an expected margin when you think about it. Yeah. Like if 13,000 people were being banned a day for cheating at Lawbreakers,
they wish they had that problem.
It would be a pretty good day.
I feel bad laughing. Did you see this week that they dropped down to 10 concurrent players on PC?
Part of me wonder, can that be real?
I don't think it can.
How?
I don't think that's.
How are only 10 people playing that game?
I don't know.
How would that? I mean, look, man, I didn't buy it, but
but you're part of the problem.
But I played the beta, and it was like, if I was into this kind of thing more, I would probably think this is pretty awesome. Like it's there's a lot to it. Like there's a lot going on. I have no time or energy to master it, but you can see it.
I'm completely befuddled by the lack of success for that game. Completely.
Yeah, I mean,
look, I didn't think it was going to be the next Call of Duty or anything like that, but man, I thought there was going to be a very dedicated, smaller community.
Like maybe you're looking at a 30,000 player base or something on per platform or something. But
the heyday of it, when it settles in.
But when it says 10, my inclination is are you reading it right? Like really? Like how is that possible?
Man, I know a lot of people in game development, and I've got to know them from interviewing them and E3 and blah blah blah. That is one of the first games where I had a really good friend working on the game. Rohan from GT is a part of the Boss Key team. And so for me, I've taken this way more personally than I ever have a game failing before. Man, I can't understand it because they built a great product. It's it's mind-boggling. But you're right. They would kill to have that problem right now.
Right. Yeah. But it's
a nuisance to Bluehole and Epic and to Boss Key, it's I wish we had 13,000 people cheating every day. It's so sad.
At least then they'd care.
Right. Or at least then you have people playing the game.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail the whole thing.
No, I get it.
But it's just I'm talking when you're dealing with that volume of people, the fact they only have 13,000 cheaters is going to make, you wonder what the comparison to Overwatch's toxicity problem is.
Yeah.
In terms of percentage. But I
think the bigger problem in Overwatch though is toxicity and not necessarily cheating.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of cheating happening in Overwatch.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's tremendously related to the esports thing because you can only cheat so long before somebody realizes that's what you're doing and you're not going to get on the team. Yeah. That doesn't help you in the arena. I think it's just the human nature to want to be better, quote unquote, than the other person. I mean, how many aimbbots did I deal with in Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament back in the 90s? It was just, it was a constant presence.
Yeah.
It's if you can, you will. Hell, that was one of the reasons I used to play Command & Conquer on M-Player, if anyone remembers that.
I do.
Because they had anti-cheat stuff that could detect if you were messing with the code, as opposed to you just started playing kind of random online Command & Conquer. I played plenty of matches where okay, I finally got to his base, and his buildings are invincible. It's there's nothing you can do.
Remember Punk Buster on GameSpy back in the day?
Every once in a while, I still have to delete that from something I installed back then.
Yeah, I know. Do you think that there's any solution to this at all?
100%?
Because it seems to be getting way worse.
I don't know if it's way worse, if it's just easier to hear about it. I feel like I ran into more cheaters back in the Wild West of the late 90s than I do now.
Well, it's a lot of people in my family think that all the stuff that's going on in the world is way worse than it ever was. And I always tell them, I'm like, Probably not.
No, crime is way down.
It's actually, there's just, everyone has a camera on their cell phone now, and everyone can capture everything, so you're just seeing more of it. And there's, obviously, there's not just 3 major news organizations
and, things
anymore.
And also, like, things, used to have to percolate from the local level up to the national level before now you can just see it on Twitter, like 5 minutes after it happens.
Now the national outlets can just go buy something from Storyful, where some guy in some local town takes his cell phone and records it, and they put it on the service, and off it goes.
And all those outlets know the crazier, the weirder, the scarier it is, the more people are going to be interested. Especially if you can come up with a right clickbait headline.
Yep, that's all it takes.
So I think it's just an economy of how fast you can communicate about this stuff and how. I mean, because that was one of the things about Dark Souls that surprised me was like people are like, I haven't seen cheating like this since the old Quake days. You know, and it's like it's not that, especially if you play mainly on console, you don't see a lot of cheating in that regard. I mean, every once in a while you have that suspect of like, is that guy using like an aimbot or a wall hack or something? Like, I don't know if he could be. It's like, maybe I'm just making excuses for me sucking. But like,
and I think that's what a lot of people do. Yeah. I think a lot of people are getting killed by cheaters, but they're just like, I don't want to make an excuse. That's the way I am. I never want to say, that he's cheating. Like,
well, that's why it took so long for the Dark Souls.
I want to take responsibility for my lack of skill.
That's why it took so long for the Dark Souls community to catch on to what was happening, is because that whole community has that giant get good thing
right,
going on.
And I think they all think that all of them are in on the same like ideals, and that they're all fighting the good fight.
And at some point, feels like, no, you can do this. Watch me do it. And it's just like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. A guy you couldn't kill really is invincible.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's all about just more coverage, more outlets, kind of bubbling everything up. It seems to me that
what were they doing in Fortnite, by the way? Like, what were they cheating at?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the exact details were of what they were doing inside the game.
Because are they cheating at the Battle Royale mode, or
it was the Battle Royale mode, which is, by the way, is like become huge.
Oh yeah, because they beat PUBG to the consoles.
Yeah, I mean, it's nipping
at
PUBG's heels now.
Yeah, it matters.
And I think Bluehole saw that coming too, and that's why it got so testy over.
Because at first, when I saw they were suing 2 guys, I saw that news story earlier, and I was like, oh, was somebody like figuring out a way to get free loot boxes? That was my first inclination.
It might be. I mean, that might be what it is. And then you're taking money away from them.
Yeah, but loot boxes aren't involved in the Battle Royale.
Right, right. But then you're talking about money. And when you start messing with somebody's money...
See, that's what I thought.
That's when things start to get a little dirty.
You start messing with the revenue... If you start killing people with an aimbot, like no one's really... But you start messing with the revenue stream...
Yep.
Then you're in trouble.
The economy, that's when it starts to cause problems.
Like, if you could be toxic to an Overwatch loot box, there would be a lot more done faster on that.
That's for sure. Maybe somebody in the chat knows exactly what they were doing. I did not see that in the story that I read about it, though. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about a game that we talked about last week, and it was kind of the headline game for the episode. But I had not really had a chance to play it yet because I had download woes the morning we recorded the show, and that is Star Wars Battlefront II.
You almost called it Star Fox.
I did almost, yeah.
Get out of here.
Get out. I have now since played it a ton. I've played it dozens of hours at this point. And I wanted to kind of deliver my impressions as well. You're a huge Star Wars fan. So am I, actually. I'm not in the same universe as you, though. Your knowledge of Star Wars just destroys mine.
Although it doesn't really matter anymore because it's all non-canon.
No, you're right. You're right.
We're going to start it over a couple years ago.
Yeah, maybe when I finish this discussion, we'll get your impressions of the new Star Wars trailer for the film, which I also watched. So now I've spent a ton of time with pretty much every mode. The only thing I didn't play all that much was arcade. And that's because I went through it a couple times, and it just
only the 2 missions.
And it just seems so easy, and like I didn't. It's like
I will probably play through that in the final retail when there's more available there.
Yeah, and once there are leaderboards there, and you actually have kind of someone to play against, it's going to be permanent. Then maybe I'll get into it more. But I just went through that a couple times. But I did play the other 2 modes a ton. Galactic Assault. It's weird to me that this game was created by DICE, because you look at DICE's other games and it's very good at large-scale combat in video games. It's kind of one of the studio's hallmarks, and that's where I feel like Galactic Assault falls way short. So the vehicles are basically kill streaks. I mean, that's really kind of how they work. Using a vehicle or playing as a special character, that you have to get an X number of points before you can use any of those. And I guess my first problem is that I wasn't good enough to get them very often. I think I got enough points for special characters like 3 times, and vehicles I used like twice. But regardless of whether I got to use them or not, it was very easy for me to see, even though I wasn't the one in control of them, how they affected the match overall. And the vehicles, to me, were just rendered almost useless in this game. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it probably has to do with the map, the Naboo map.
I don't see any reason to ever use an aerial vehicle.
No,
in the
there's no reason whatsoever.
Naboo map.
No, there's none. They were actually a hindrance. Like, you couldn't do anything. It's like, yeah, you can fight in the skies with the other team who may or may not, probably not, have a ship at the same time. But if you actually try to engage in the mode with the ships, it's pointless. Like, the alleyways are too narrow. Nobody runs down that big strip down the middle where the ship goes. You pop out there to actually shoot the mitt, or whatever the hell it's called, whenever the shields are down. But otherwise, you stay in the alleyways for cover. And so, to me, that seemed pointless. The other thing I noticed is that, like, when people would get the ground-based vehicles, you're seeing some of that now, they're just like sitting ducks. Like, the infantry are too nimble and too quick for them to be in danger of the vehicles. And in fact, in a lot of cases, I saw the infantry sneak up behind the vehicles and take them out before the people who were driving the vehicles had any idea of what was going on. So, that to me is a shock. Because if you think about the pedigree of this studio, it's done a great job. And I would argue even the first Battlefront did a pretty good job of integrating vehicles. Now, I'm assuming a mode is going to come to this one as well that plays like the last one, where the actual infantry stuff actually mattered. But when I played in the beta, it didn't. And the special characters, they're too powerful. It's like, once someone became Darth Maul, or pretty much any character that had a lightsaber, it's just like the whole team is just wiped out. Like, I felt like I had no opportunity to kill any of the players who were playing as special characters.
I killed several Darth Mauls.
Yeah, I mean, generally how you kill him is he's off literally killing like 10 people at once, and you're standing away from him like
I did kill twice. I killed Darth Maul one-on-one as a normal trooper. It is possible. It's just, I think it might require that you're playing against someone that doesn't quite know what they're doing. But they lose health much faster than the first game.
Than in the first game, you mean?
Yeah, the first game they were essentially, it was like a raid boss, basically. And in this one, like, they got more life, but like it seems more fair now. In this anyway, and I still feel like they're going to tweak it, because there's a little bit of here going on. You know, I still think the blaster characters are less powerful than the lightsaber characters by a large degree, except maybe Boba Fett. But being Han Solo versus being Darth Maul, big difference.
Yeah, huge difference. And that's why I said any character that carries a lightsaber, essentially, is just, to me, seems completely unsolved.
They should be to some degree, but I think they need to work up a system where, like, defense, and there is you can guard with the lightsaber more effectively now. But I think there needs to be more of a balance of defense with offense with the lightsaber characters, because right now they just kind of go Buck Biggity Yoda wild and just succeed.
It's just a dervish of just destruction,
which is kind of what Maul should be, but like there's a little bit of overpoweredness there, I guess. I don't know. You want to feel powerful in that regard, but I do think they're better than in the last game.
What was the mode in the last one where it was on Hoth and you had like Walker Assault? That I thought they did a great job on. Like, I ended up playing that mode probably more than any other mode.
This is basically the same thing, except with an MTT moving.
But the map is what makes all the difference in the world.
The map is not great. I mean, I'm hoping the other maps are better.
Yeah, me too.
But we might, this might be a war from, Call of Duty World War II situation where, like, I hated that map, but I love that mode idea.
Yeah.
I feel like there's got to be, because there's, the...
It's also an Overwatch mode. Overwatch's biggest
mode. The icon for that mode is a walker, so I assume there will be more traditional things in there.
And then Starfighter Assault. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the moment-to-moment gameplay in that, because it's more open.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the objectives the objectives weren't big enough. It's like, hey, go shoot this big ship and blow it up. Hey, go shoot these couplings or defend these couplings. It didn't feel appropriately Star Wars enough to me. The flight combat and all that was great, and it was good enough, in all honesty, for me to overlook all the other stuff, at least initially. I don't know over the long haul if it will. But it just didn't feel like... It felt like you saw the best parts and the most interesting parts of it after the match was over. When it shows, like, the cutscene of the end result of the match. Like, I felt like we should be doing the stuff that they're showing in the cutscene at the end of each match. It just seemed... I don't know. I wore out on that pretty quickly once I kind of figured out what the objectives were. And I ended up becoming the person that I hated in Galactic Assault, which is the bulk of people who do not give a crap about the objectives and just go out and kill each other. That's the other problem, too. And maybe it's because it's a Star Wars game, so you get more casual people playing it. But the vast majority of people playing the beta did not give a crap about playing the actual mode. Like, I saw so many people run past the disruptor weapon. It's like, it's there. Get it, pick it up, use it, shoot it. And no, they just keep running, and then they just run in and start shooting each other.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the nature of these, the beta stuff, where like people are kind of learning. Early on, these games are like that. Just eventually, people settle in. That's all. For me, it's always more interesting when everybody's kind of learning how it works. And the thing that's going to make Galactic Starfighter, the Starfighter Assault thing, boring to me is when everybody just knows to beeline for the objective and figures out ways to complete the objectives before you can even start playing. That's going to happen too. And like, I don't know. I do feel like maybe we were given less spectacular maps on all of these modes than perhaps exist in the game, because like I don't like how the Naboo Galactic Assault map flows at all. Galactic Starfighter is cool, but I admit, I mostly just dogfight in an interceptor when I play that mode, and
that's where I had the most fun.
I don't, and there's always people that are going to get in the bombers and go straight at the shield generators, and like I don't worry about it, but I just try to keep things off their back, which I guess is how it's supposed to work. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's just such an improvement over the last game that like I can't find too much to yell about
game
the
is
Starfighter.
Freaking gorgeous.
Yeah,
gorgeous. Even on my base PS4, no PS4 Pro, that game is just stunning. Runs great. How do you feel about the spawning? Having to wait for a squad to spawn?
Because of the nature of the game, I think I actually prefer it, because that way at least you're in a group whenever it kind of forces people to sort of be together.
But nobody does.
Nobody
when you
does.
Spawn, they just all run different
Right, they all run different
directions.
But like early on at least it kind of provides a little spawn camp protection.
Yeah.
Which hasn't been a problem.
I haven't seen any spawn camping.
But like,
the map's so freaking huge.
It's so long. But like, I like the idea. I see what they're after.
I see why they're doing it. I just don't like it. Like, I don't like having to sit there sometimes 10 seconds waiting to spawn.
Although I think with these objective-based games, you have to find a way to kind of temper how fast you're pouring people back into the map. Like
I'm sure there's an algorithm or an equation that's part of it or whatever. But look, I had fun with the game. But I had fun with the first one, too. And then once I ultimately got a hold of it, I played it for like a week and then kind of didn't go back. So I have some reservations about it after playing the beta for a good amount of time. But
well, I didn't play a ton of the beta just specifically because I don't want to burn out on it before the final comes out. I'm looking forward to playing all the different maps. Hopefully there's some stuff that really hooks me. I do like the more objective-driven stuff, like what they're doing in Galactic Assault and the Starfighter thing. So I'm hoping it, because that's the kind of thing that gets me bored with competitive like shooter games is when it's just who can shoot the most people.
Right.
I don't have any interest in that.
What's your KD?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So we'll see. Like I'm not more or less excited about the game coming off of the beta, really. It's exactly what I hoped it was going to be, and I just want to see more.
I think what I would say is the things that I thought I was going to be excited about, I'm not, and the things I didn't think I was going to be excited about, I am. So I'm with you. I'm kind of on that same keel where I'm just as excited for it as I was before, but for different reasons now, I guess. I guess that's the best way I could put it. Would love to get at least a little taste of the campaign in this, but I get it. I mean, they gave us a lot for an open beta, so I'm not going to complain about it. But yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of competition coming up here. But it does have the advantage of having that license, which obviously makes a big difference. And with games like Call of Duty kind of going in a new angle this year, maybe it does kind of open up the the prospects for it a little bit more. But
is this you playing in the footage?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, you are getting creamed.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how they're finding you that fast. I never get shot at that much.
Well, you got to remember, I was playing this at the end of the beta when people had been playing it. So they had gotten good at it, essentially. And I played this last. Like, I was playing Galactic Assault first before I started playing this. So I was just basically a sitting duck out there. I still had fun with it, though. And I got better, too. I grabbed this footage, like, when I first started playing, so... But, yeah, not long to wait for this one either. And I do appreciate that they gave us a nice big slice of it to play. I mean, think about how much we played of this game, and just think about, like, 5 or 6 years ago how much we would have played of a game like this. Like, nothing.
Yeah.
So... The times they are a-changing, and they're definitely changing for the better. So I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, I guess, is what I'm saying more than anything else.
I would have liked to have seen more campaign, but obviously you don't need to beta test that, really.
Yeah. The one thing I would say I agree with from your impressions last week is on that Naboo map, it is hard to see the droids because of the coloring. The other thing, too, is the droids are really small and skinny.
Yeah, they're small and skinny and
they're
the
hard
same color.
Yeah.
And actually, I know a guy who worked on this a little bit, and he said all the beta tests, like the what you call it, the play tester, like the testing group,
the QA team.
The QA people kept complaining that they couldn't see the droids.
Oh, they did.
And there was, I guess, there was some kind of internal debate about that, maybe. About like, it's fine, and that's what the color they are, kind of. There's this Star Wars lore versus gameplay kind of thing there.
And that's what Naboo looks like. So,
right.
But maybe you just choose.
I don't know, lighten or darken the shade on something.
Yeah, it is hard to see them.
Like on the map, probably. I mean,
and they're so skinny. I mean, the headshots, their heads are like this big. It's like you got to be really on it to land a headshot in the game.
But I never got used to the color of the droid matching the background of the Naboo architecture.
Yeah. All right, let's move along. So this week was Oculus Connect 4, I believe. I can't believe it's the 4th year that Oculus has had its big convention. Usually it's not that big a deal. We'll get like a price drop or something like that, or they'll show some new games. This year was probably, other than the first one, probably the biggest one yet. They had basically announced, so we've known about this new headset they've been working on called Santa Cruz for quite a while, which rumors say that it's wireless. But Oculus kind of surprised everybody by announcing Oculus GO, which is in fact completely wireless. But the big news is that it's completely self-contained. You don't need a PC, a cell phone, anything. It's coming out early next year for $200. Matt, and it does 360-degree tracking. It doesn't actually do room scale VR. Matt, do you think that this might be the turning point?
Couldn't hurt.
For VR?
I mean, that's kind of I didn't think they'd get to this that fast.
Yeah.
Certainly not for that price point. If it doesn't have a heat problem, then I think they might have something there. It's kind of a halfway step between kind of the Google Cardboard thing and the full-size HMD.
And Gear VR is kind of in the same class as Cardboard.
But I think that's kind of the direction that the stuff needs to be taken to get it in the hands of more people. Seems smart to me. Yeah, most of the people I know that play VR for the first time and don't like it, their first complaint is the cord or the cable. That seems to be, and that's something Pactor complains about all the time too, is the cable. The length of the cable. He feels restricted. He doesn't feel comfortable moving while he's playing because he's afraid he's going to stumble over the cord and destroy his HMD or rip a cable out or stumble over the cot, whatever. That seems to be one of the most common complaints with VR. Yeah, I don't have that. I don't have a problem with the cable, but I would certainly prefer it without the cable, just in the sense of like less wires is better.
I think what was brilliant about Oculus is that it figured out the problem with creating a wireless device for VR is the home device communicating with the headset. What do you use to send that much information from that device to the headset? And it just said, well, let's just get rid of the device and just build the whole thing in one, so you can kind of hop and skip around that limitation of current technology. So to me, it's kind of brilliant. A lot of the impressions that people wrote up after trying it they were shocked that the front of it wasn't heavy, because there's nothing on the back to kind of balance the weight on the front. But I guess the way that they've engineered it, what do you call head ergonomics?
Just ergonomics.
Is it still ergonomics?
Yeah.
However, they designed the Oculus Go, the balance, how it feels on your head, they said, is like perfect, which a lot of people
were shocked. It's probably some kind
of
like suspension trick they're doing with the strap on it.
Yeah, I guess so. But to me, this is what VR has needed for a long time. A reasonably priced...
Now we just need a game to play.
Right. A reasonably priced HMD that is wireless. So to me, this is the first time other than when they first unveiled Oculus Rift, this is the first time that I've kind of sat back and went, okay, now I get why this company was worth so much money. Like, you're kind of finally starting to see some of the brilliant minds behind Oculus Rift coming up with ideas that actually show the brilliance beyond the initial concepts of it. And of course, they're talking about, during the keynote, they're talking about how it's going to integrate with outside of games. It's compatible with all Gear VR stuff. So it comes with kind of a library right out of the gate. Do you see people, though, who have passed on VR finally jumping in for this?
It depends what it does. I mean, I know that this is their long... Is it kind of their long-term, plan to sort of have Facebook function in a VR environment, where, the idea being, you can... that's their ultimate goal, is that the social network would be a virtual presence idea, where, you can watch movies with your family across the country and stuff like that.
During this keynote, he tries to contend that everyone at Facebook is now having their meetings using that technology.
Okay.
Yeah, he was trying to say everyone's doing this now.
Maybe you made them
versus
do that,
right versus just sitting on a conference call. They all prefer now to do it in a virtual world.
How many people are just flipping each other off the whole time?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people like the cover of the conference call for big meetings, but. Yeah, I don't know. $200 still. I don't know if that's impulse buy territory.
It's not, but it is fad territory.
It is.
It's Wii territory. If it can find something that everybody wants to have in their living room, that could be the key. But it's going to come down to functionality and software. But this is a really cool piece of tech they're showing here. And I'm speaking to someone who has every headset except the Rift.
Yeah.
I think they are showing that they are taking this next step in a way that the others have. Because what did Vive just show? PS4, PlayStation VR showed the headphones are built in now.
Yeah, they just released a brand new model, I believe today in Japan, of PlayStation VR.
So the ball's in Sony's court now, I guess, to do a wireless version. Even though, it was because the other version, that new version also has a different pass-through box where you can actually do HDMR through it now.
HDR, and the cable's way smaller.
Yeah,
it's just a skinny little cable now instead of that ribbon band that goes that literally weighs 2 pounds.
Well, that's also so you have to buy the new one.
Right. Yeah.
You can't just use your old VR headset with the new box.
Right. Yeah, you can't do that as well. And but I think Sony would be really stupid to split its user base when you only have 1 million sold. And by the way, this is the 1-year anniversary of PlayStation VR, which is hard to believe. I can't believe it's been a year since that launched.
It's been a long time.
And they've sold 1 million, a little over 1 million in a year. When your user base is that small, you really can't afford to split it.
No, I mean that's only half a PUBG.
But yeah, then I start to wonder, what happens with PlayStation 5? Do they introduce a new headset, or?
I think you need to keep continuity as best you can.
Yeah. I mean, if you think
about it. It's like PlayStation
it,
Camera,
There's really no reason for the old PlayStation VR to not be compatible with PlayStation 5. Because really all PlayStation VR is just a screen in a mask.
A screen and a camera.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to be able to improve the screen that's in there, but you can improve the quality of the signal that's going into it.
I think that should be I mean, I don't see any reason that wouldn't be. The same way that you could use the old PlayStation camera on the new one if you wanted.
Yeah. And then also Oculus Rift announced that the price drop is now permanent. It is $399 for good. When they dropped the price and it was supposed to be temporary, it didn't really move the needle anyway. So not sure that that's all that big of an announcement. But it is good to see that Oculus has figured out that it needs to come up with cheaper, more accessible products for people who are not willing to kind of invest an entire week's worth of paycheck into what is essentially a toy for most people. So I think Oculus is finally maybe headed on the right track. I think it would have been better if they got this out for the holiday season. Because I do remember last holiday season, my sister reaching out to me and saying, hey, do you think my brother-in-law would like VR? And I said, yeah, he would. And then she's like, okay, well, there's so many. Which one should I get? And I kind of pushed her towards PlayStation VR because he already had a PS4. And as soon as she saw the price, she was like, no way. And this is a family that's doing very well financially. they live in the same neighborhood as Ben Roethlisberger, the Steelers quarterback, and she still felt like it was too much. So I wonder, and that's not a joke, Sam, by the way. They actually live in Ben's neighborhood.
Careful.
He trick-or-treated at their house, which is really funny. But which makes me wonder if even $200 is too much, one. And two, coming out in February, March, April, when people don't count on spending kind of that big chunk of money for gifts for the people that they care about, the timing may not be great.
Yeah, but at the same time, it gives them time to put out a refined version for the second half of next year, which can actually be the holiday purchase.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even no matter how cool this looks right now, there's got to be some bugs to iron out.
Oh, for sure.
So I feel like maybe the second iteration of this might be the winner. You know,
Santa Cruz might be their product for Q4 next year, though. That's my guess.
But it wouldn't surprise me to see kind of like some kind of like updated, you know, like an Xbox One S style thing, like come out in time for like October, November next year.
Yeah.
So, and maybe by that point you'll have some software built up that really, you know, takes the wireless aspect, you know, into account and shows it off well.
So a year later with PlayStation VR, would you recommend that people buy it?
No.
I wouldn't either.
Like I still like it, but I haven't put it on in months.
Dude, me either. Mine probably has like an 1/8 of an inch of dust on top of it now.
Mine has a lot of mail on it. Like it's just like stacked envelopes.
Yeah, at this point I would not recommend somebody picking it up.
Not for that price. I mean, no. There's nothing there yet. And
what price would you recommend it at? $200?
If it came with a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Until there still isn't a killer app for it.
No.
I mean, it just seems like no matter what.
There's stuff I like on it, but it's nothing that makes me go like, man, you need to buy this.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a couple things where I'm like, you need to come over and try this.
Right.
But that's not the same as buying something.
Plunking down the cash for it. I just can't ever see the industry getting to a place where the biggest developers who make the best games are going to create games for VR first. I just can't. I mean, we have Insomniac who is creating games for VR extensively, I might add. But the games that it's making, they're not as good as Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah,
they're not as good as Resistance.
It's in its infancy. It's a new medium, and they'll get there. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, we're a year in plus. I mean, overnight. It definitely didn't happen overnight.
Well, I think even before these things came out, I was saying, like, 10 years. You got to give it about 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, I still believe that there's a place for it. I still believe it's kind of the next frontier.
But we're very much in kind of the Atari 2600 NES era of VR. And look at what we were playing then versus what we're playing now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it'll get there. But give it time. It's not gonna be Blade Runner 2049 immediately.
I am beginning to wonder though, because if you look at the Atari 2600 and the NES, they were extremely successful.
Yeah,
they made a lot of money off of those, and that has not been the case with VR. And so you start to think on down the road, like Starbreeze is making an HMD, and all these other companies are kind of jumping into it now. Microsoft is finally making a mixed reality headset.
Yeah, well, because they know that someone's going to be the hit. Someone's going to be the 2600.
But if it doesn't
and there
happen,
there were a ton of other game consoles out in competition with the 2600, and nobody remembers any of them except maybe ColecoVision and Television.
Yeah.
But there were tons of game. I mean, that's where game console comes from. Like it was like a VCR console. It was like a brick of plastic sometimes with wood paneling because it was 1977 and like
the Atari 2600s you bought at Sears were shaped exactly the same, but they had like the wood paneling thing on it.
Everyone who had one I knew had the wood paneling one.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I had the real like Atari 2600, but I did have a friend and the reset button was like different on it and blah blah blah. But anyway, back to my point is that I just wonder how long investors and publishers are willing to keep throwing money at it without getting a return.
I've been asking that about Xbox forever. So, look, I mean, like the idea with the Xbox originally, and that was when Bill Gates was still in charge, but he said, we need to own this space in the 21st century, and I don't care how much money it costs.
Yeah.
And somewhere out there are people saying the same thing about VR.
But do they have as much money as Bill Gates and Microsoft?
Zuckerberg's pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, if Facebook wants to own that, they can.
Well, they do already.
And it sounds like they are sounds like they're pushing forward. I mean, it's costing Elon Musk a lot of money to get into space too, but in the end, it will probably pay off for him.
But he also,
we're talking about people. I mean, with Zuckerberg as well, we're talking about people who are thinking decades down the road.
Yeah.
So, and the thing about Zuckerberg is he's young enough that
he'll
he has
to see it.
decades down the road.
He'll get to see it. Yeah, that's not the case for a lot of executives at these big tech companies. He's definitely one of the younger ones, but that's what happens when you're a genius, I guess. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about crowdfunding. But more
the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. More specifically, Fig. Mm-hmm. So, Fig, for those of you who may not know, is a crowdfunding service where you don't just throw your money into a pit and you eventually get a free copy of the game and you get to enjoy the fact that you helped fund the game. Fig is an actual investing platform for game development where you put your money in with the idea that if the game is successful, you actually make money on your money.
If you are that level of investor.
If you're, right, and if you're accredited and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, you can just back something the same way as Kickstarter.
You can.
But you can also take it one step further.
And put a little more money in with the idea that you make money back. Mm-hmm. And the returns are starting to come in from Fig. The first project that it created, the investors doubled their money in essentially 2 weeks.
Pretty good.
That there's no investment better than that. Mm-hmm. There's none. You're never going to find a way. Maybe drug dealing. I don't even know. But I can't think of another way to double your money in that amount of time.
Well, you could be Chris Roberts.
Chris Roberts?
The guy who's making Star Citizen.
Oh, yeah. Or you could be the guy who created PUBG.
Right.
Who went from couch surfing to, probably going to be a billionaire ultimately, or close to it.
I don't think so.
You don't think he'll be a billionaire eventually?
I think that's a myth people believe about game development, but if you look at what Bluehole is doing, they are diversifying and they are expanding. You don't keep all that money for yourself if you expect your company to be around for a few decades.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, somebody just swoops in and just buys it.
Well, I guess so, but I don't think he's interested in that.
He might if the price tag's high enough.
Maybe, but he's got to build that company first.
Yeah.
At this point, you're buying potential if you do that, where it could be worth a lot more if you build it into a Minecraft situation.
Yeah.
Which Minecraft, early on was a sensation, but Minecraft eventually proved itself to be a cultural phenomenon. If you get that point with PUBG, that's when you get the $5 billion payout from Microsoft.
But I mean, I'm just talking about $1 billion.
Right.
I mean, it is kind of a cultural phenomenon already.
From a certain slice of the culture, yes.
Right.
But there's more to be had there, which is I think why they were so mad about Fortnite.
Yeah.
Because that is going to cut into their ability to expand their niche out into the consoles.
Or cut into their ability to negotiate a bigger price.
PUBG is PUBG. But PUBG could also have been PUBG on consoles.
But look, if they're negotiating with a company, and the company's like, well, there's Fortnite over here, and it has as many players as you almost, and it's only been around for 3 weeks. I mean, that does undercut you a little bit in negotiations.
Somewhat. But that's what I'm saying is I don't think anyone's thinking about buying them yet.
Yeah. Well, I think Microsoft may be thinking real hard about buying PUBG.
I don't know if that's really happening yet. It's not
because it would be too smart.
Partly, but also because there's probably other people. There's rumors about Tencent taking a look.
Yeah.
And they'd probably be willing to spend more money. And I mean, look, if Microsoft was smart, they would at least buy the exclusive console rights to it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it doesn't look like that's on the table.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. I think people look at some of the sales some of these games have and assume the people that made them are suddenly filthy rich, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
It's just
no, that's absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
Most people who make games, they're not wealthy at all.
No.
There's a big rank and file sort of grunt component.
I mean, even Notch wasn't that rich until Microsoft bought the company.
Yeah,
from him,
he was probably worth $100 million, maybe something like that, from Minecraft before he sold.
I mean, I don't know if it's even that much at that point.
It's crazy. So anyway, let's get back to crowdfunding. Mm-hmm. So Fig is kind of the new kid on the block. It was backed by Double Fine and Tim Schafer. I think he helped ingratiate people to the platform because, for whatever reason, everybody trusts Tim Schafer. It's just something about the way he is. And look, if you've met him, and I'm sure you have, I've met him many times, he is an awesome guy. And a lot of times you meet people who are really awesome, and they don't come across that way on camera or in public until you get to really know them. But he is exactly who he is on camera. That's who he is.
Yeah.
And I think he helped.
There's no guile in Tim Schafer.
Yeah, and I think it helped convince people to say, okay, well, if Tim's cool with this, then I'm cool with it. And in that way, Fig was incredibly smart to get him on board. I mean, maybe...
Well, Fig was also started by Justin Bailey.
Right.
Who is not a Metroid reference. He is a real person.
Yeah.
And he worked with Double Fine. He's worked very closely with Tim Schafer on a lot of things as well. I mean, this is in some ways a Double Fine spin-off.
Yeah.
And
may end up making more money than Double Fine ever did.
And in general, I did do a little freelance work for Fig that didn't really get published or anything. But I did some stuff with them early on when they were starting to launch. And as far as I could tell, that company's run by a bunch of real stand-up people.
Yeah,
like they're smart, but they're also like good.
Yeah,
as far as I could tell.
So we've seen Kickstarter.
And it looks like they're coming through on what they said that was going to be.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, whoever dreamed that the investments would pay off that much?
That's a crazy return. I mean, investments just don't do that.
Well, the craziest part about it too is that the first game that they're talking about is called like Kingdoms and Castles or something like that. Is basically just like a world building game with some light tower defense. So, to be perfectly honest with you, if I were looking at this project, and we're seeing it right now, and I were like, should I invest in this? I would have said, hell no. I would have never, ever invested in this game.
I get Goddess flashbacks from this.
Yes. But this game, it turned a massive, huge profit for the investors. So you start looking at Kickstarter, which, if you look at all the metrics, is kind of slowly fading. Swery's latest game didn't hit its goal, which is shocking. It wasn't even close, but also the amount of money he was asking was ridiculous.
For a lot of money.
Yeah. I thought that was a little shady, if you ask me.
I don't think it was shady. I think it was optimistic.
Yeah.
And he's apparently relocating to Kickstarter for another attempt at a lower price range.
I just felt like what he was asking for that game.
Yeah.
He didn't need that much money to make that game, in my opinion.
Well, he probably needs way more than that, but it's one of those kind of like starter fund things. But I think part of the problem was like it's very hard. Look, I love Swery's games, but I think you really ran into the problem where it's like imagine trying to pitch one of Swery's games to people. Yeah. Like how do you even begin? And this game had, even as someone who loves his games and loves weird, like kind of offbeat game things and loves cats, like I couldn't make heads or tails out of what this was supposed to be. And I'm like, I think so, but I'm not. I feel like I need a demo first or something before I throw money at this. It's like it's a lot easier to throw money at something you fully I mean, you look at it, even if I'm not interested in that castle building thing, I understand what I'm looking at when I see that. Like it's a harder.
You understand that there are some people who do enjoy games like that, at least.
It's
on a base level.
It's a harder pitch. Where you're like, oh, you're this woman, but you turn into a cat at night, and then you do.
Then you realize the whole town turns into cats.
Yeah, they all turn into cats. Like,
but then you can buy the dogs version. Yeah. Like, okay.
It's like some kind of Sonic Unleashed meets Nintendogs thing. I don't know what you're doing here.
But the percentage of gaming Kickstarters that actually succeed has fallen off a cliff over the last.
Well, people have wised
years.
up.
Right, because they've got burned by games like Mighty Number 9. I mean, we can go on and on about games that haven't actually turned out.
And I think people have, at the very least, people have started to realize, like, A, if you get involved in this, you're putting your money out there right now, and you're not going to see anything for 2 years. People are aware and have gotten, they've adjusted to the time span between spending the money and seeing the product. And the other thing is,
could be never.
Could be never, yeah. But even if it is, it's like you're talking about a good chunk of time. I think the only thing I've Kickstarted that really games-wise that came out when they said it was going to come out is Sundered.
Yeah.
Which I did Kickstart and I forgot I did it. At one point I was like, "Oh, that Sundered game looks pretty cool."
So long.
And suddenly it wasn't that long. It was like a year and a half. But like it was a pretty fast turnaround. But I just didn't remember doing it. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, that Sundered game's coming out."
Did you buy it?
No, I got it. It was right when I was thinking like, "Oh, that Sundered game's coming out next week. I think I should take a look at that." And I got the code in my email. I was like, "Oh,
thank God."
Because I looked at it, I'm like, that seems like something I would be interested in. And indeed it was. My past self gave me a gift and I didn't even realize it.
That's like when you buy stuff when you're drunk and then it shows up at your door.
Like, hey,
I kind of like what's in the box.
Yeah. But I've slowed way down on the game Kickstarter stuff for similar reasons because I know that if it turns out to be something that I really do want to play or I really do want, I can just buy it then.
I can just buy
and sure,
it,
it's like maybe $15 in the Kickstarter and like $30 then, but it's like,
does it really matter?
No,
because you're taking the risk with the $15 that you may not get anything, or if you do get it, it could be terrible.
And some of it takes so long that with inflation calculated in, that $15 is worth $30 now.
Yeah. So do you think, because the other thing about Fig is it seems like the projects are vetted a lot more than they are on Kickstarter.
Yes.
Like anyone can just go on Kickstarter and say, I'm doing this, give me some money.
Yeah, there's a lot more top-down control on Fig because there has to be, because there's there's real money and consequences if because that's what people use the rhetoric about Kickstarter as like, I'm an investor, and like, no, you're a donor.
Yeah.
Like, you're donating money and hoping a game pops back out of that hole in a couple of years. But in Fig, you're really, and if you're an investor, and Fig really does have legit investors in these projects, you have a responsibility legally to these investors, and that needs to be policed in a more sober manner than I think Kickstarter does with its own projects.
So you think the the higher quality of the projects, the vetting of the projects, do you think that is having a big impact on why Fig is starting to do so well?
I think so, and I think also the experience of the people that kind of make up their sort of board of judges or whatever you want to call, Bailey and Schaefer, and I think they've got some old Interplay guys on there and Black Isle guy. I mean, it's there's some top frickin' development talent, like kind of like serving as advisors on this thing. And I kind of attribute that with when you see like the Castles game, where it's like, clearly these guys who know a good game from a bad game were able to look at this thing and say like, yeah, this is a winner. Like this is something to put on our website. And so far it seems to be working.
Would you ever consider investing in a game on Fig?
I would consider it, but it's just not something I've gotten around to, because the process is actually, you got to go through like credit checks and like,
you have to become accredited.
It's a real thing.
Because you have to make sure you have X amount of dollars in your overall wealth. You have to make sure you have X amount of dollars in liquidity that you can access at any time. Not just anybody can go in and start giving money to Fig Project. Well, you can.
But you
won't
would
get
not
a return on your
there's
investment.
no return from that.
Right. So it seems to me that Fig is kind of the best of both worlds. I mean, you can go in and do the Kickstarter thing if you want, but if you're serious about it, you can go in and make some serious cash. Yeah.
I mean, if you can get approved for it and like you can make your decisions wisely, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
And clearly, judging by Swery's game, like not to be negative about it, but it's like clearly there seems to be a little more of some judgment being used on the part of the people signing, donating or investing, because you would think that a Swery game is a big niche favorite, and niche favorites do real well with these crowdfunding things.
It generally does. Yeah.
But like clearly, when that kind of investment is on the line, it didn't fly. And I think, to me, that's actually a positive thing for Fig, is like, you look at that and it's weird and it's unconventional, but it's also doesn't appear to be a particularly safe investment. And the Fig investors shied away from it. And like, that is how it should work.
You're right.
Really. I mean, it's a negative thing in the sense that like we don't get to play this weird game, and I like all of his stuff, but at the same time his stuff isn't particularly successful, and that makes it a bad investment, and that's why he can't get shit made, which is why he's trying to crowdfund it.
No, you're absolutely right.
Kickstarter may be the smarter location for that.
Yep. So we'll see. I mean, these are two opposite trajectories. We've got Kickstarter that's on the down. We got Fig that's on the up. It'll be interesting to see in like
above it all, Star Citizen.
Yeah, you're right. Star Citizen's like the flat line that is. I have a feeling is going to eventually maybe go down.
Not yet. I thought Star
$500 million can go a long way.
Yeah. Well, I thought Star Citizen's in like donation stuff would fall off when lifetime insurance ended.
Right.
Which was like November 2013.
Right. That was your last chance to cover your ass.
That was the last time that basically, for like any ship you bought before then, anytime it blows up in the game, you get another one instantly pops up for free in your hangar. And after that, any ship you buy, you'd have to get insurance on it in the game, paying in-game currency or whatever.
That's so dirty.
Which is, it's... so I thought it would end up, because the advantage of paying real money for these things early on was like you're going to get these big ships that you could basically always respawn if something horrible happened to them, right?
Yeah.
Whereas after that, you're spending real money on these things that if they get blown up and you don't have the insurance on them, they're gone forever.
That's so dirty, man.
And like
insurance, it's just a 1 or a 0 that they flip in the code. It's so crappy, dude.
Player base. I don't even want to call them player base. Like the community, they've accepted it.
Yeah.
That is apparently that's okay with them, with these people that spend $100,000 on freelance ships. They want to start a ship rental business. There's a guy who wants to do. He's got like 100 freelancers in a giant hangar, and he's like, "I'll rent them out." And I'm just like, okay.
I mean, it is kind of interesting because it does kind of create this virtual reality with its own economy and its own businesses.
I mean, this kind of thing, not on that level, but this kind of thing where like things are worth real money and time equates to real money, and there's sort of that kind of value assigned to things. That is what makes a lot of like those weird EVE Online stories so interesting. Is when like people pull some crazy heists. I think if Star Citizen ever comes out, and I think it will, but if it ever comes out and actually fulfills the promise of what they say they're trying to make, I think you're going to get some equally interesting stories out of it. I just don't know if I'm going to be involved.
Well, you're already involved.
I am involved, but it's like. It feels like this thing is so huge that it's going to be like EVE Online, where you could just mine asteroids your whole life and never see anything interesting the whole time. Meanwhile, like somewhere off in some other quadrant, like this crazy thing's happening, and you're like, well, I could go see what's happening, but I might get blown up, and I don't have insurance right now. And that's a terrible way to have to make a gameplay decision.
Think about that. If this gets blown up, all the money I spent on this is gone. You're staying in the garage.
Yep.
Like,
you're staying in the garage. I'm taking the Origin.
Or you just try to sell it to somebody.
Well, people have started. The price on reselling Star Citizen accounts has dropped a lot.
Oh, it has.
Yeah, it's still up there. You can still make your money back from what you spend on it, a little bit extra. But it used to be like, if you had the right lifetime insurance ships, you could make 3-4 times what you paid for it. And now that seems to be pretty much over. But I don't know why people still throw money at that thing, but I guess the true believers are going to be the true believers, and we'll see what happens if it ever comes out, because that 3.0 update for the alpha is like a year overdue.
I'm really starting to wonder.
This 3.0 they showed that at Gamescom last year and this year, and it was they said last year at Gamescom the 3.0 would be out in December, and it is almost December again. So
they put up videos every day.
I know.
Like 5 of them a day.
I think Star Citizen is Sea of Thieves needs to have a developer diary showdown. Like just fight to the death in a parking lot.
Dev diary
somewhere.
off.
Just pirates versus space ninjas or something. I don't know.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk next about games as a service, another hot button topic, along with loot boxes and toxicity that seem to be making the rounds every week in the industry. This week, a research company called Digital River said that games as a service have tripled.
Is this the same Digital River that always screws up my limited edition shipments?
I doubt it.
Because there's a shipping Digital River thing that like every time I've ordered one of those, because Square Enix used to do their limited editions through Digital River, and it would always take weeks to get there.
It's possible. It doesn't seem likely, but it's possible.
I don't know if that's not.
But that is a very unique name.
Yeah, it's not a common.
So they actually just parroted what PAC has been saying for months, which is that games as a service, while less packaged products are sold, the actual revenue generated by the industry is growing exponentially. Triple the industry. That seems a little, maybe, boundary pushing to me. I don't know if that's the case. I
feel like there would have been more pushback on this if it wasn't true.
Yeah, but Matt...
The big publishers would be like, we're not making it. Who? Where? But everyone I know involved in development is saying, like, yeah, they keep doing it that way because it works.
Yeah. It's like if people weren't buying loot boxes, they wouldn't have loot boxes anymore. That's just the bottom line. But what I want to ask you, Matt, is do you prefer games as a service with fewer games coming out, or do you prefer the old way, where games were maybe a little more disposable, but there were a lot more of them?
I don't care.
Really?
As long as they're good, I don't care what kind of form they take.
Have you found yourself getting hooked into games as a service, though? Because personally, I have not.
Not really.
I've not found a single game that I play where I become a games as a service person, where I play this one game over and over, and I'm putting money into it through microtransactions and loot boxes or whatever the hell else they use to sustain them, constantly buying the DLC. And part of it is what I do, that I can't spend a ton of time on one game. But even if I could, and maybe I'm just conditioned to being this way because I've been doing this for 20 years or whatever, but I don't really have any interest in playing one game for like 3 years. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. Like, some of these people play these games for like 3 years. Like, I eventually get bored of the mechanics of games, and I don't want to keep playing them. Like, even, there was a time where I would play Call of Duty, and it was kind of like my snack game. So I would play it all year until the next one came out. But it was like that game that I played while I waited for my wife to get ready to go out to eat. I'd play like 3 rounds of deathmatch or whatever, or I have 2 hours before I need to go to bed. I don't feel like diving into something crazy epic, and I would just play it for a little while. I've never got into a game as a service, and obviously, a lot of people are, but you say you have no preference.
Not really. I mean, as long as the game is good, I'll play it as long as I play it, and then I'll move on to something else. Because I'm also the same way. I don't play things for 400, 500 hours very often.
But, right, I wasn't asking you whether you like games that are designed as games as a service better than games that aren't designed as games as a service. I'm talking about kind of the overall environment that we're in now, where more games that are coming out are games as a service, and there are less games to play because of it.
Well, I don't agree with that. So,
I mean, that's
what
the data says.
Well, I've had more than I can play this year already, and this is one of the best years for games ever. So clearly, everything's pretty much okay. Like I don't see. I mean, and everybody's making money off of it if it's tripling. I mean, I don't see a downside there. Like,
well, I think what you're seeing is games like, let me see if I can think of one that would have appeared last gen that wouldn't appear now. Like a game like Dante's Inferno from EA. Like, that's a game that showed up last generation. Not a great game, B-level game or whatever, but something different setting, maybe a little more risky. You don't see games like that from EA anymore. Every game EA puts out now is a platform that it expects to build and expand upon, and it wants to get people in and stay hooked into it and keep buying DLC. Would you rather have an environment where you do kind of see those more off-kilter B-level games scattered in a little bit?
I got one of those this year. It's called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And it was actually good, not shit like Dante's Inferno. That thing still exists. It's still there. I mean, the games as a service thing is a AAA level thing. Not to go all Jim Sterling on it, but a AAA kind of thing. I was that's the high level top, kind of like big budget guys. And there's always going to be something more. The indie scene has sort of moved up and stepped up, frankly, and kind of filled that gap that the B-list games have used to serve. And I don't feel like I'm really missing anything there.
But I do feel like I'm missing something. You look at a game like Rainbow...
You're missing shitty games based on the classic literature?
They're not all crappy, though. If you look at a game like Rainbow Six Siege, there's a good example. I'm a huge Rainbow Six fan. I enjoyed last generation when we got a new Rainbow Six every 2 or 3 years. I liked that. Now we have this multiplayer-focused Rainbow Six Siege that it appears that's probably the only Rainbow Six game we're going to get out of Ubisoft this entire generation. I'm not okay with that. I would prefer to play more and new Rainbow Six games. The other thing that you're forgetting too, or maybe not forgetting, but just overlooking, is that this also means that most of the content that you're playing is multiplayer focused. It's not single-player campaign sort of driven content. And I do miss that. I finished Destiny 2. I'm probably not going to go back and play it again. Once I played it through the 24-hour stream for 4 or 5 hours and realized how much work it was going to take before I was ever going to be able to tackle my first raid, I'm over it. And so I know Destiny 2 is going to stick around now for the next however long. I really liked Destiny 2 when I was playing through its content.
But you might go back and play it when the first expansion comes out.
Possible.
Because here's the thing, if it follows the same curve that most MMOs do and Destiny 1 did, when the new expansion comes out, it's going to be a lot easier to get to that power level that it takes forever to get to now. And you can kind of you can kind of consume the content. That's what I did on Destiny 1. I consumed the content kind of a year behind everybody else, because it got easier to get up to that power level and then see the stuff I couldn't see before. And I didn't mind that. It was I guess I can see how someone would feel like they're kind of left in the dust if this is what they want to play, it's the only thing they want to play. But I'm just not, it's like you say, I'm not a huge multiplayer person in that regard. And on one hand, it sucks that Rainbow Six has kind of become that, but that's one of the few examples I can think of that is like that. I feel like I've played a lot of single-player campaigns that were really top quality this year. We are getting a single-player campaign out of Battlefront II where there wasn't one before, so that's a step in that direction. Yeah. I don't feel like I have less to play in that regard. I agree with you that I don't play stuff forever because I get tired of the game. Like I said, I think a couple shows ago, I played 500, 600 hours of Phantasy Star Online, and I still feel mildly ill when I hear the title screen. Just
I love that music though.
Oh yeah, but just the revulsion of like, I start hearing all the sound effects and thinking about all the maps, and it's just like, it's all still in there.
And some of the creatures.
It's like how I don't like thinking about like 24-hour fitness because I worked operations there for 2 years, right. And it just reminds me of their database program, and I just don't want to think about it. And so I don't. The very rare exceptions are things like Mass Effect, which I played the Mass Effect games for 700 hours total across all saves. I don't do that for anything. Multiplayer, I don't care if I'm better at shooting someone in the face than anybody else, which is part of the problem why I don't get addicted to those games. The only thing I do is fighting games. And I think that's a more interesting conflict to me, partly because I've been playing since the arcades in the early 90s, and I probably just don't know any better. Like, if I'd never played those then, would those appeal to me now? I don't know. Probably not.
Don't you think, though, that anytime developers are making less games, the chances of those developers creating something innovative is less?
Maybe, but like most of the games as a service games are not innovative games. They're games that provide a particular type of gameplay that people have proven they liked, and they're trying to find a way to keep them playing their brand of that. It's like saying that Hostess cupcakes don't reinvent the cupcake every time. Nobody cares about whether the cupcake's any good. They want that brand. That's the idea.
I don't think that's a fair comparison, though. I think
it's absolutely a fair comparison.
with games, people care about innovation more than they do about
I think you're completely wrong.
Snack cakes.
Innovation doesn't mean shit. Execution is everything. Otherwise, people wouldn't buy the same damn Call of Duty every year.
But innovation with execution is what, in my opinion, makes the industry go around. I mean, you look at a game like Shadow of Mordor. I mean, in the Nemesis system.
Oh, that's great. Let's see how it sells. Probably not as much because everybody's freaked out about loot boxes. Or if you want to go the other direction.
But that has nothing to do with the base discussion that we're having, which is the more developers create, the chances are higher that they're going to create something different and unique and compelling.
Which doesn't translate into sales nearly as much as making the same proven thing over and over again.
Look, I'm not arguing what's going to make more money. We started this conversation by saying that this model has tripled the industry.
Right.
I'm saying as a player, which is better? Which do you like more?
Depends on the game. I mean, I think it depends on the player. Like, clearly there's a whole lot of people out there that don't really want Pokemon to change too much.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't buy the same thing over and over again.
One thing I will say is I feel like Japan has kind of been immune to this. Japan still is in that old model. And you saw Square Enix like a week ago talking about how, hey, like we need to get into this games as a service thing.
Well, I think they're edging towards that a little bit with Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, definitely. That's their
maybe that wasn't the original plan, but I think they've sort of
figured it out on the fly. Yeah.
That's clearly what's happening with that game right now. Even though the idea of starting that game up again is crazy to me. But like, but I don't know. I've seen people say like playing. They played it at launch, play it now. They say it's a totally different game. I don't believe them, but
I don't either.
But if they can convince a large,
I actually enjoyed it the first time though. I didn't think it was a bad game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's well documented on the show. You're not a fan. But me personally, like...
But hey, props to them for sticking with it and not just stepping away.
Yeah, you're right.
And trying to make it better.
Well, if you got 12 years wrapped up in something, it's kind of hard to just walk away from it.
True.
But I totally understand your perspective. But from my perspective, I would prefer to go to a place where some of these developers that actually have resources, because some people will argue, oh, the indies fill that in. But they don't. It's like... You can tell the difference between an indie game and a game that actually has a decent budget and still tries to do some new ideas. And that's what I would argue is that the new concepts are all now be given to teams of like 6 guys that have like $1 million to make a game. Like, I would prefer to have $10 million budget, 40 guys working on a new concept. And look, there's no denying either what you say, that these games as a service games are really sound, solid, polished games. There's no denying that. But I think when you try to bring new people into the industry and you're trying to get new people to become gamers like us and not just someone who buys like a game or 2 a year, I think you need those new ideas because by now most people have played Call of Duty. They've played shooters. They've played an MMO. They know what they are and they know already that they don't care enough about that stuff to become someone who buys one game a month instead of one game a year. And I think you need those new experiences with a little bit of marketing and money behind them in order to get kind of new people into the fold. I mean, you look at games like Nintendogs or something like that. Like, that's an insane concept, really, when you think about it. But Nintendo was like, hey, we'll put a team of guys on this game, we'll shove some money their way, and we'll see what happens. And it became a phenomenon that was a Trojan horse that got more casual people into games again. So, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword because, as the data suggests, the industry has tripled in revenue because of this stuff. But who's to say that if they had not stayed on the same path that it wouldn't have happened? Look at the Wii. I mean, the Wii was this crazy, weird idea that drove a lot of revenue into the industry, although it could be argued that it didn't convince people to become people like us.
Right. It absolutely didn't. It was the pet rock.
Yeah.
It was people's like, oh, I want to play this thing. It's a box that plays Wii bowling. Like, that was what that thing was. It did not make anybody into a gamer, at least not in large droves. And I think most of those systems just sat and collected dust.
Where are all those Wiis now?
They're still sitting up there. They're in a drawer somewhere. And, like, most of them probably still have their Wii Sports disc in them.
They probably do, yeah.
Like, that never left from the day they were bought.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's... And that was innovation. That was a new idea.
For
and
sure.
That new idea had about 3 months of life in it for most people.
A little bit longer, but...
I mean, you got to space it out for like how much. You know, most people I know who are not gamers who bought the Wii, after about 3 months they were done.
Yeah.
That was how long that lasted.
It kind of became,
and people kept buying it over the course of the next few years. I mean, it's not like it was 3 months and no one cared about the Wii again. But that had about a 3-month shelf life once you finally purchased one.
It became like a party thing, though. Even once people stopped playing it on their own, like you go out to the bar or whatever, you go out drinking. You go back to someone's house, you see the Wii sitting there, you're like, hey, you got Wii Sports? Well, of course I do.
Yeah, it came with the system,
right?
moron.
And then you start playing, and then you start playing
Yeah.
and then you end up playing it for 3 or 4 hours. Like, I think its legs were a little longer than a few months, but still, the point is that it never became the evangelist to get people to become core gamers.
Well, the other thing is because what you were playing on that is not a core game.
Right.
You know, it's not the same
either.
experience. And, you know, similar thing happened with Guitar Hero and Rock Band. That lasted longer, I think, but after a certain point...
Because of the karaoke part of it,
right.
which is something anyone can relate to.
The absolute party game element of it, but like at a certain point, you can only have so many plastic guitars in your damn house.
Yeah, I still have a closet full of those.
I still have a bunch of those, and the last time I tried a bunch of them, they don't work anymore.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't use them on the new consoles. I actually have like the guitars that were made out of like wood.
Yeah, I have one.
They're like real guitars.
I have one of those
without strings.
One of my friends moved last year, and he had it was the Stratocaster, it was a full Stratocaster made by Stratocaster that worked with Rock Band, and he just gave it to me because he's like, I'm never going to use this.
Yeah, sitting in the other room over there, there's a stool for Rock Band for the drums.
I have a drum
it's like
throne
a real drum stool.
Oh yeah, I bought one of those for my drums. Now I use it for my cocktail arcade cabinet.
Oh,
so it's still
still
has a use, but it's not.
It is crazy when you really start going through your closets. You look at all the stuff you spent money on and how so much of it isn't worth anything.
Oh, I have going through my closet, I realized I have an old Fanatec steering wheel thing. I'm just like, oh, that I had. Yeah.
I have a Logitech wheel, and it's just been sitting in a closet for like 4 years. Like
Steel Battalions back there somewhere. You know, it's
just disposable income. I wish I had more of it these days, but
yeah, it's I mean they're doing just fine with the financially, and like I mean it's a business. The idea is you take the thing that's proven and you try to sell it to as many people who have proven to be interested in it as possible, and they're doing that real well. You know, I think you're seeing people compete for kind of that shooter dollar, so to speak. You've got people, you know, Destiny 2. Oh, it's like this thing over here. Well, no, you want to play Rainbow Six Siege? This one's free over there. Well, Call of Duty's coming out. We're going back to World War II. You know, it's like what about the one that's Star Wars based? You know, it's like. You're just trying to attract people. It's like, this is the kind of thing we know you like to play, and we want you to play this one instead of all the other ones, and we want you to play it for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And to me, it really does feel like everybody, you know, it's like a soda war. It's like, everyone's got a cola, but you want to drink this cola.
Right.
Why? Because does it taste different? No, but like
I would argue that
sometimes
it does.
Sure, I mean no one can deny that playing Destiny 2 feels different from playing Battlefront 2, which feels different from playing World War 2. What are the twos? What's all the twos?
But I guarantee you, if someone on the outside looking in would say they all look the same,
right?
Because you're shooting stuff.
And then take a sip of Sprite,
right?
But it's just, you know, that's what it looks like to me. Is like you're not just trying to get people to try your product. You're trying to get them to commit to your product. You're trying to get, you know, like the people who will not drink Pepsi. They will drink only Coke.
That's
me. Me too. But the brand loyalty, like the brand loyalty thing, is what these top end publishers are after right now. That's the shift, I think. Yeah. The shift is they're trying to shift from this idea of like, oh, you consume each game as like an individual like entree, and they want to make it like, I play Call of Duty. And Call of Duty already had that to some degree because of the size. But now they want it to be like, you know, Destiny wants a piece of that. Battlefront 2 wants a piece of that. Battlefront 2 is going to have a hard time doing that because I think of all the loot box problems, that's the one that's going to be the problem.
Yeah,
it's just, and it's a thing that doesn't happen with something like Horizon or Zelda.
Yeah.
Where people don't, people do obsessively play those games. People are still playing Zelda, and you can see them kind of getting in. They both have the season pass thing happening, but that's not exactly the same thing because it doesn't create that loyalty, that daily loyalty.
And that maybe goes back to the heart of what I was talking about. Is I would like to see more games like Zelda and less games like Destiny.
Well, if we hadn't just gotten Zelda and
I was just
Horizon
using that as an example.
but it's just like I feel like those games are still there. It doesn't feel to me like I'm being shorted on.
We just waited how many years for Zelda?
Well, that's Nintendo. That's not.
But it's still it's
not like Zelda was delayed because Nintendo was trying to come up with a games as a service idea.
Splatoon.
That's different. They're not charging you anything for that.
Well, what do you mean?
The maps are free on that game, right?
I believe...
It's not a game as a service. It's just you want to play this as long as you want to play it because it's fun. Like, it's different than charging you for that extra
I think most people who play games as a service games would say that they continue playing it because they think it's fun.
Yeah, but Splatoon's not going to ask any more money.
Which I can't understand after 2 years of playing the same game how someone could still say it was fun, but...
Yeah, well, people would say that about you in Madden, too.
Yeah.
But...
Well, I don't play as Madden as much as I used to.
Call of Duty?
No, I don't play that as much as I used to either. Not at all. It was funny. On a lot of people are rediscovering that, or discovering that I am in fact still alive over the last couple of weeks, and so some of them are like, "Oh my God, it's Shane. He's like not dead or whatever." And people are funny. Like we had some
like Invisible Walls fans, or
or just people from me from GT or whatever. And people, it's funny. They still assume that like someone left a comment saying, "Oh, Shane's we made like an offhanded comment about Call of Duty," and somebody actually wrote, "Well, Shane's a COD fanboy." I was just like, man, you are living in like...
You missed the part where like you spent 10 minutes ripping the Call of Duty beta. It's like, wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't on that episode either. And I was like, man, like you're still living in like 2007 or like 2008. It's crazy. Like, hey everyone, I'm still alive, and I'm not a Call of Duty fanboy. It's really bizarre. It's just funny how people get an impression of you from whatever reason, and then you're just slapped with that label for like the rest of your life or whatever. So
yeah, well, I still think he was a Call of Duty guy. So,
really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the last 2 years I've hardly played it at all. It's turned into just another shooter for me at this point, where I play it for like a couple weeks.
Well, what's the thing you play? Is there anything
that I play like constantly?
Yeah.
Still League of Legends maybe. Still a game that I play a lot. Not a lot, but it kind of fills in like any hours that I have to kill.
I don't. The game that I still go back to just like to play, just to fill time to play is The Witcher 3 and No Man's Sky.
Interesting.
Those are the two I play.
Games like that I always look at as like, oh my God, like the world is so huge, and like I'll go back in there, I won't even remember what I'm supposed to be doing, and like I never look at those games as like
quick hit. I forgot how to get off the horse.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can get in and out real quick on those games.
I picked it back. I mean, I played The Witcher 3 probably 200 hours total between the PS4 and the PC version. And I admit, I loaded up when they did the 4K patch last week, and I forgot how to get off the horse at one point. Like I was just like, how do I get off? And I finally figured it out. I got back in the swing of things pretty quick. But like, yeah, that isn't it. But it's like I like that game so much that I don't care.
Rocket League is a little bit like that for me.
Yeah, Rocket League.
Like I always leave it installed on my PS4, and like I'll jump in and just play it a couple times here and there. But yeah, Call of Duty, as far as that's concerned, like I don't play it anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I don't play multiplayer games like that. I just don't go back to it. I go back to the single player experiences, which is what No Man's Sky is. Let's be honest. I mean, forced at one point, but now it's that's not what I'm here. Is to see other players, do whatever. It's like. I go back to the experience. I go back to the world, and I can see myself doing that with Shadow of War, like just going back to play a couple of asynchronous multiplayer invasions and here and there.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that hooks me. But I'm never gonna like be someone who plays the same game every night. It's just sometimes I have been that person because I have a group of people who are all playing the same game or getting achievements or whatever. And after about 3 or 4 nights, I just hit the point where I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
No mas. Yeah. I get it.
It's one of the reasons I don't have a huge, a regular multiplayer grip anymore is because I just don't feel like I can commit to that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't always know what I want to play that night.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about loot boxes again, but from a completely different angle. So this week, the ESRB came out, Entertainment Software Ratings Board, which is the equivalent of PEGI here in the United States, came out and said that it does not deem loot boxes as gambling. Matt, do you agree or disagree, and why?
Of course I agree.
Agree that it's not gambling?
Yeah.
You don't think loot boxes are gambling?
They're not, by any metric.
Oh, good. We have different opinions here.
Because gambling is when you bet some money or something. You bet money on a thing that has an outcome, and you either win more money or you get nothing. And with a loot box, you have put money to buy something, and you get a random assortment of things, but you always get things. You can't get nothing. So it is not gambling. Unless you want to call baseball cards also gambling. Unless you want to call capsule toy machines gambling. Unless you want to call gumball machines gambling. Like, it's not gambling. You get something for your money. Maybe it's not what you wanted.
But aren't you getting something for gambling as well? You get entertainment.
It's not the same thing.
How is it not the same thing? It's still valuable.
Because it's an abstract thing with no set value. Like, you can crap out in Vegas and have no more money. You walk away with less than you had before. Like, that is not the case with these loot boxes. You get something. You know what you're getting. You are guaranteed to get a particular product from it.
But the product for gambling, to me personally, I'm not a gambler per se. I go to Las Vegas a couple times a year. I play fantasy football. That's the extent of my gambling. I don't go to gamble to get something back monetarily. I look at gambling as entertainment. So whatever money I spend on gambling is for me to have fun and make memories while I play with new people I just met at the table, or if me and my friends go and play. It's all about the time that I spend doing it and the memories that I've built from that. That, to me, is what I'm getting back from gambling. If I actually win any money, I'm like, damn, I finally won
Well, that
money.
has nothing to do with...
Which you never do.
That has nothing to do with the legal definition of what gambling is. Your good time has nothing to do with what gambling is. Like, it's how you approach it, and that's fine. It's also how I approach it. I don't care about... if you care about winning money back from gambling, that's how you're going to get in a problem.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I'm no expert on addiction, but like, if I'm going to go to Vegas and play some poker, I'm going to just be like, this is the amount of money I can spend to put down on this poker game, and I'm just going to play the game. But like, the point of the gambling...
My definition of gambling is spending money not knowing what you're getting.
So baseball cards are gambling.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
That's not legally true. That's not what gambling is. Because otherwise we're letting children gamble by buying trading cards. That's not what it is.
But
They got whatever amount of money they spent on it, they got that amount of trading cards. Maybe it didn't have the player they wanted, but that's it.
I've heard these analogies 100 times. This is the one that everybody uses.
Well, that's because the analogy is correct.
Well, if you're looking at the strict legal definition of it, that wasn't the angle I was coming at with this. Like, the angle I'm coming at is, do you think that this will corrupt youth?
No.
No.
I played poker when I was 8. Did I get corrupted by it?
Did you?
No, it doesn't mean anything.
You're not the judge of that.
But it doesn't mean anything.
What do you mean it doesn't mean anything?
Because that's just moral panic shit. That doesn't mean anything. And what kid is buying loot boxes without their parents' permission? That's the parenting problem.
But we're seeing what's happening, Matt. These people are going to these gambling skin sites, and they are taking their parents' credit card and putting down tons of money.
But that's not the game. That's a separate thing people are setting up using the API.
But it all starts with the loot boxes and the skins and not knowing what you're going to get and then getting it. And
that's
being like,
not
I got lucky
gambling,
and I got it. Now I'm going to go here and sell it.
That's not gambling, though, the loot box. Taking that and doing that with it, I mean, that's like saying that like getting paid for your job is gambling because you use that money to gamble with. That doesn't mean anything.
To me, gambling, and not the legal term, I've never even looked at what the legal term of gambling is, but to me, gambling is gambling money, not knowing what you're going to get with the money that you are giving to someone or something.
But if I give...
That's a gamble, and that's the definition of the word gamble.
But if I pay money for a loot box, I know what I'm going to get.
You don't, though.
Of course I do. It's I'm going to get
How
content
did you know
for
what
this
guns
game.
he was going to get in that?
I didn't, but I knew I was going to get...
You didn't know?
No, you're wrong. I knew I was going to get guns out of it.
You didn't that time, though. Look, you got like some goofy skin.
But it says what you're... Dude, come on. Fucking come on.
What?
You're just being obtuse for no reason here.
I'm not.
If it says the thing is going to give you a legendary orc or whatever, that is what it tells it's you're going to. If
You don't know you're getting that in a lot of games, though. It doesn't say you are going to get a legendary orc, and then you get the legendary orc. It says, here, give us money.
Oh my God, it's like arguing with a Trump supporter. It's
Please, come on, give me a little more credit than that.
I won't, because you're fucking off in crazy town on this one. Like, if I buy a baseball card pack, I know there are baseball cards in it.
Right.
That's the whole thing with the loot box. That's not gambling.
I would argue that in some ways it is. It's not a legal definition of gambling, but you're putting it down $1. You could get
if you were going to define
that
as
a bunch of cards of players nobody cares about. You could get all the rookies in one pack.
Right, it's a randomized product, but that's not gambling. You don't win anything out of it.
I think it is.
You're wrong. Like, if you're going to stretch the definition of gambling to include that, then it means anything.
But, Matt, you don't see where a kid messing around with loot boxes might later ingratiate that kid into real gambling. Yes, because it's the same.
No!
It is.
How many baseball card collectors become gambling addicts? What the fuck does that mean?
That's an extreme example.
This is your example of someone playing with loot boxes and becoming a fucking gambling nut is also an extreme example.
It's not, though.
Of course then show me the research or shut up.
Look, here's the thing, Matt. What happens when you
We might as well be on Fox and Friends at this point.
Please let me talk, dude. When you open a loot box and you don't know what you're getting, when you get something that makes you really excited, that same chemical in your brain that you get when you're really gambling fires off. It's the same, whatever you want to call it, it's the same damn thing. And you get addicted to that. And then you start finding ways to get more dopamine. How do you do that?
Because that is this chemical that's released when you get pleasure from anything.
Right.
It's not a specific gambling chemical.
But you learn when you risk something and you're saying, I'm going to put down money not knowing exactly what I'm going to get. And holy cow, if I get something good, I get a huge release of dopamine.
But it's the same.
And you start to the human brain associates cause and effect. And so you start to draw those lines between, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I was getting. I got something good. Holy crap. You start to associate that with gambling. And then it opens your mind up to saying, well, oh my gosh, what if when I'm of age, or maybe I can find a bookie who will let me bet on football? It does have a correlation, Matt. And I agree with you. Maybe the legal definition of gambling doesn't match up with loot boxes, but loot boxes can absolutely, especially young, impressionable minds who still haven't got shit figured out, it can absolutely break down that wall.
Show me the science on it. Show me the research. Or I think you're just basically in the same territory as someone who's saying that playing Call of Duty trains you how to shoot people in the head for real.
No, it's not the same thing.
Show me the correlation through research that is a thing that happens, because you sound like a panicking person on an old 80s show where they thought like Dungeons and Dragons was going to lead people into Satanism.
What?
You don't remember that?
Way out of bounds. Look, gambling,
you don't remember that?
Look, gambling is a real addiction, Matt. Shooting people is not an addiction.
Well,
gambling
depends who you are, isn't it?
Gambling is a real addiction that afflicts millions and millions of people.
So is anything that has a dopamine rush to it. You could be saying the same thing about winning a game.
No, gambling is different. There's a reason. There aren't focused.
Gambling is only different because it's easy
to
get that rush from it.
There aren't help groups to help people from like mountain biking.
And the reason,
like mountain biking releases dopamine. There aren't any groups that are funded by the U.S. government to keep people from freaking mountain biking.
But why?
There's a reason, because gambling is dangerous and it can ruin your life.
But why is it dangerous? Why is it so addictive?
Because
it's money. You can win money from it. You can get rich from it. That's the temptation. Well,
That's
why is
part of it.
Then what's different? That's the difference. Is the money.
It's not the money. It's the risk and the reward.
Yeah, but
and there is money involved.
But what is the risk and the reward? You are risking money to be rewarded by more money.
No,
that's the risk.
What you get back is almost irrelevant. It's just that sometimes you could get something back really awesome.
Thing is awesome.
It could be a big pay. It could be a big payout because you parlayed on betting like 3 football games, and that like doubles every time you win each one of those games. It could be getting an extremely rare weapon in a video game. It's all about that risk. It's taking the risk, putting money down first. The money is the first part of it. It's important. Money in gambling. Money in loot boxes, and then the mystery of not knowing. Maybe I'm going to get screwed. Maybe I'm not. Maybe tonight's my night, or maybe today's my day. Where you finally put down that $1 for that loot box, or you go to that blackjack table and put down $100 and play one hand, and you hit it, you double down, you win your hand, you win $1,000 on one hand of blackjack, or you get that crazy legendary that you've been waiting for, or you watched 20 YouTubers win and freak out over. I mean, there's a big difference. And
then why aren't Pokemon cards illegal?
Because there's not as much risk there. There's not as much rush. It's like...
Why?
Sure. Because the chance...
If you care about the only value any loot box thing has, either we're talking about digital loot boxes or real-life loot boxes like trading cards or Pokemon cards or whatever you want, Pogs. Like, Pogs are the same way.
I don't even know what Pogs do.
Oh, those little bottle cap things.
I know what they are. I don't know how they work.
It's the same as trading cards. Like, sometimes they're shiny. It was lame. Alf is back in Pog form. But like, no matter what, it's the only value that's attached as the value that you attach to it. I mean, there is just as much dopamine rush out of some kid back in the day getting a Charizard out of a Pokemon card pack as there is for someone getting whatever purple gun came out of that thing. Like, it's the same deal. It's the same experience. And
I don't know. It is, though.
Well, you're wrong, because it's the same thing. It's even game related. Like, how is that any different? What is it about putting these boxes in a video game that makes it different from any other form of the same randomized item, the blind box idea that we've been doing for even the fucking loot. I mean, literally the loot crates that you subscribe to each month are like that.
I think a lot of it is built around knowledge, whether you know something is a rare or not. I bought baseball cards when I was a kid. When I got cards, I didn't even know. With baseball cards in particular, you don't know what cards are worth money because they don't become worth money for, like, in some cases, decades later. You got to wait till that player gets good, has a Hall of Fame career, and then 15 years later, finally his rookie card is worth something.
Right.
Like,
but
you never open baseball cards and even know. And it's the same deal with Pokemon cards.
Charizard was instantly the most valuable card in the first run of Pokemon. You don't know that. Of course you know
when you open a loot box, you know immediately. Because it says right there, ultra rare, crazy rare. No one will ever get it.
I have legendary guns in Fortnite that are garbage. That doesn't, just because it's purple doesn't make it good. Just makes it rare.
I'm not saying it's rare. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether it's actually good in the game or not.
But Charizard is rare. It's obviously rare. And
nobody knows that. I didn't know that.
If you're buying Pokemon cards, you know that. Like, you can't just discount the knowledge of someone.
Let's talk about a kid who's never bought a Pokemon pack in his life, and he gets a pack of cards. Do you think he has any idea whether those cards are worth anything?
Yes.
No, he doesn't.
If he's interested in the game. Okay, look, if you are going to deny that people who bought Pokemon trading cards for the trading card game knew that the best character in the game was Charizard, like, I don't know what to tell you.
Matt, I still don't know that.
You don't play Pokemon!
There's tons of people. But what if I went and bought my first pack of cards? I'd have no clue.
Well, who cares what the fucking loot box thing is?
It's total false equivalency.
No, it's not.
It totally is.
No one knows what these guns or whatever you're getting out of these pockets.
It says right there, ultra rare.
Who fucking cares?
The kids care.
There are tons of other cards in the Pokemon packs that are as rare as Charizard, but they're not as good as Charizard.
Nobody knows.
You know if you're playing that game, and there's no reason to buy that pack if you're not playing the game.
And I would argue that if a kid is really into Pokemon, that eventually buying those cards does turn into a little bit of gambling. Once they understand exactly what is rare and what isn't, it is kind of gambling.
But that's not gambling. You're trying to get a blind bag thing. That's not the same thing as gambling.
To me, it is. And I'm someone who does gamble, and I know the way loot boxes work. I get the same charge when I'm watching. It's just like watching a slot machine at the casino. They even display it just like a slot machine. The things go up and down and doing, doing, doing. I mean, it's blatantly obvious what's going on here. I can't believe you can't see it.
I see what you're saying. I just think you're wrong.
Well,
because it's not the same thing.
I would hope at least at the end of the discussion you would apologize for calling me saying I was acting like a Trump supporter. I would hope at least at this point you can understand where I'm coming from a little bit.
I don't understand where you're coming from. I just see where your logic is, but I also see where your flaw in your logic is.
Well, I think you have flawed logic. You're hanging on a definition by the law of what gambling is. I'm looking at gambling as somebody who does it and knows how it makes you feel.
Are you saying I don't know what gambling is, that I've never gambled? Of course I've gambled.
I'm not saying you never have, but I will say...
I also know what dopamine is. I know what serotonin is.
I've done it a lot more than you have. And I've also been friends with people who have become addicted to gambling and have literally ruined their lives gambling. And I've sat and watched them crap out. And that's the same thing these kids do once they get a hold of their parents' credit card and jam it in there and buy 100 loot boxes and sit there and wait to hit their ultra rare. It's the same damn thing.
Well, see, you need to show me some of these kids that do that beyond like edge cases, because you're talking about people that you know that have been in actually gamble addiction problems. That's a widespread thing.
It is.
Where's the loot box addiction center?
Well, why we're talking about this, because someday there may be one, and that's why they're trying to head it off at the pass. Like,
well, no, they're not, because the SRB just said it's not gambling.
Right, which I think is a bunch of bull crap. And one thing I would say is, like, as long as they keep this
what do you think the SRB
in M-rated
should do,
games, well, I'm just going to tell you what I think they should do. I think that they need to make sure that they keep these loot box things in M-rated games so that adults are the only people consuming this. Having a 5-year-old kid sitting there watching essentially a slot machine roll, hoping that he gets something, to me that is bad. Like, that is corrupting children. I don't care what you say. It's bad for kids to be experiencing stuff like that.
That's why I made the Trump supporter comparison there, because when you say that, you are in a strange moral panic zone where you don't get to decide what corruption means.
Okay, so you're saying 5-year-old kids should watch porn or watch snuff films? I'm not allowed to say that? Where do you draw the line there?
Say it about your own kid.
Oh, come on, Matt. You're out of bounds.
No, I'm not.
You're basically saying,
and if you're really going to try to compare opening a loot box in Fortnite to porn with a 5-year-old, like, you're in crazy town.
No, you're the one that just made that comparison.
No, I'm not.
Oh my! I'm ending this conversation right now.
That's not what corruption means.
That's it. Wow.
God forbid a child be exposed to porn, sure. But that's not the same thing as opening a box of fake guns in video games.
I'm not the one that made that comparison.
Yes, you are.
You were saying I can't tell somebody else's kids what is wrong for their kids. And I'm telling you right now, I can tell you that it is wrong for your kids to watch porn, and it is wrong for your kids to watch snuff films. That's all I said. You tried to say I can't tell someone what...
snuff films don't exist.
Okay, you're going to watch this again, and you're going to realize this whole little loop right here.
No, I'm not.
That you're completely out of bounds.
No,
I never said that.
You brought up porn and snuff films to try to defend your ridiculous point.
That was not what I was defending, Matt. You tried to tell me that I have no right to decide what is bad for kids. And then I said...
You can have an opinion on it.
And then
but you're saying they're corrupted?
Let me finish. And then I said, oh, you're telling me that I cannot tell you right now that watching porn and snuff films is bad for kids. You're saying I can't say that. That's all I said.
You can say it,
I did not make the comparison. I don't know why you went there.
You brought up porn and snuff films. Corruption of children related to video game loot boxes.
The reason I brought that up is because you tried to tell me that I cannot say what corrupts kids or someone else's kids.
Because you cannot make that moral distinction for another parent.
Yes, I absolutely can.
Well, you can in your own opinion, sure, but you can't dictate that any more than the SRB can decide what corruption means in that regard.
Well, I don't understand why you're so upset over this.
Because that's
as soon as we started talking about this, you lost your shit. Right out of the gate, you just flipped out.
See, now you're going to an emotional argument because you think that's a way to come at me like that, but you're wrong, because one of the reasons I think this is so annoying about this angle on loot boxes being gambling is it's never going to... Look, because I think we can establish that I'm also not a fan of loot boxes, right?
It doesn't seem that way.
See, that's where you fail on this.
I'm not failing at all. I'm trying to have a conversation with you about something. You lost your shit in the first sentence.
No.
You did. You're going to watch this again. You're going to see it.
No.
Okay.
I did lose my shit. I'll admit that. But
immediately.
Not immediately, because you
went
around
it's
on the
tape.
No, it's not.
It is on tape. It's on the hard drive right there.
That's not tape. You went around on... no, I guess a hard drive is actually tape, isn't it?
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Why are you so upset about this? I don't get it.
Because illogic pisses me off, and
it's not illogical,
it is.
Though.
It's not. But further, if I'm really going to get down to what the reason the whole thing about how loot boxes being gambling annoys me so much, it's because I don't like loot boxes much either. I don't buy them.
I don't even say I don't like them. I just don't like kids experiencing them.
I don't care about that. I think that's a false equivalence. And the reason I don't like it is because I would like to see the loot box thing at least be curtailed, if not banned. I mean, I don't know about banned, because I know people hate them enough to ban them.
I just think only adults should be interacting with them.
I think for the most part they are. Although, again, and this is a side thing, this kind of distribution of digital stuff has been part of mobile games that children play for years. The ship is the horse is out of the barn on that one.
Look, the topic was the ESRB saying it's not gambling, and the reason they're doing that is because they don't want to put the publishers in a place where they have to do this. They have to put loot boxes only in M-rated games.
Well, see, and I'm getting to why the ESRB doing this, I think, is part of the issue here, and that's because you're never going to legally get loot boxes defined as gambling, and if you can't do that, you make the arguments against loot boxes very easily dismissible from not necessarily from a court of law, but from sort of the court of opinion. It's like, well, if they're not gambling, who cares? Like, that's your whole argument, right? It's like, not your whole argument, but like kind of the theoretical argument is like, well, they're gambling, so we shouldn't have them because they can lead into addiction and they can lead into children to like get accustomed to these things. All the things that you're saying is a danger of something that is actually gambling. But you're never going to win that fight with the courts because the law doesn't basically rules that out.
I never said that would happen.
Right, but what I'm explaining to you why your course of like angle on this is annoying to me as someone who would like to see loot boxes curtailed, because it's going to make it so easily dismissible in court that you're never going to be able to fight that battle a different way again. And that is the wrong way to approach it to me.
Well, my approach on this
even if you believe it is gambling, that's not the way you win that fight.
My approach on this isn't that it should ever go to court. My approach is that the ESRB should act like an adult and take the role that it's supposed to have in the industry, which is ultimately to protect younger players. And instead of worrying about semantics like the ESRB, and to a lesser extent you have been, just do what's right. There's no reason these kids should be exposed to this type of activity. But they already are. It plants the seed in their brains, but they don't. It's different, though.
But the kids being exposed to this sort of distribution, I don't know what you want to call it, like distribution of goods in games, this has been part of mobile gaming for years, and the kids are exposed to it through that, not through like.
But that doesn't make it right, because
it doesn't.
Because mobile games got to them first.
But what I'm saying is, like, you're talking about ESRB ratings on like games like Shadow of War or Fortnite or whatever. But like, that's not where the kids are contacting this. They're contacting it in like these weird little games where you have to buy extra energy for shit and things like that. That's where it comes from. And if you're going to regulate that, I mean, now you're talking about bringing in Apple, you're talking about bringing in all this other stuff. And like, that battle is over. The question is, it's too late.
It's not too late, though, because there are young kids being born every day. And if it's just like the whole thing on guns. They're like, well, we can't ban guns because there's already so many out there. But that's a completely flawed argument, because you have to start somewhere. So we ban assault rifles now. Sure. The next 30 years, there's going to be assault rifles out there. Eventually they break. Eventually they get lost. 30 years from now, we get to a place where there are less assault rifles. And you can't just say because things have been going on forever that you just give up. And so, sure, this generation of kids, they've all been exposed to it. There's nothing we can do about it. The seed's already planted. But you got to start somewhere so that kid that's born today, 5 years from now, he doesn't get exposed to this stuff until he's an adult, where he can kind of process things and he can make decisions as an adult. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to start somewhere. And I feel like the ESRB...
I think that starts in the home. It starts with the parents.
You're right. Absolutely. That's a big part of it, being raised right. But the ESRB is being the enabler and making the parents' job more difficult than it needs to be.
Here's what I think the ESRB is doing here, and I think you may see... this is not the last we've heard of this. I don't think this is going to be the ESRB's final thing. Because what I think the ESRB thinks, and I don't have any proof of this because I don't know anybody in the ESRB, what I think is happening here is they think if they do say it's gambling, say they could, because even if it's not legally gambling...
It opens up Pandora's box.
Well, right, because then all of a sudden lawmakers have to look at them. And the thing the ESRB wants to avoid more than anything else ever, and its the whole existence owes itself to this, is not having government oversight of the game industry.
I totally get why the ESRB is doing it. It's for that, it's for money,
And look...
There's a million reasons why. I just think it's wrong.
I don't think right and wrong is something you can determine in that way, especially on an organizational level of that size. I guess I'm kind of turning into a libertarian here, but like, that's not the ESRB's problem. It's the parent's problem. And I don't like to put everything on the parent like that, but it's like, you don't want your kid playing with loot boxes? Don't let them play with loot boxes, you know?
But
And,
I
like,
think the parents rely on the ESRB to let them know whether their kids should be playing with the games.
That's an interesting question. I wonder how many parents really do look at
I
that.
mean, if I had a kid, I would, and I wasn't into
you
games.
know a lot more about games.
It's just like movie ratings. Parents look at movie ratings, and it's like you can't go watch every movie your kid wants to watch. You can't play every game your kid wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's why these organizations are in place to help parents. It's not completely absolving parents of all the responsibility in parenting, but it is giving them at least a guidepost so that they know what they're getting into. And the fact that, in my opinion, something that very closely resembles gambling is being sort of force-fed into our kids and given to our kids, I think that's bad. And I think it's the ESRB's responsibility, and frankly, the reason why it even exists, to step in and do something. And instead of doing that, it's doing exactly what you're talking about. It's worried more about getting into litigation with the government. It's worried more about the lost revenues of that possibly taking away what has tripled the revenue of the entire industry. And I just feel like the ESRB...
Did they do a breakdown on that, like with the games as service thing? Like how much of that is like random content boxes, and how much of it is just like buying new maps and buying new stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, the report is pretty extensive. I probably should have brought in more data than I have, to be perfectly honest with you. But the story is curated on SIFTD if you want to find it. But the story is actually really good, and the reporting company does kind of really go granular and kind of look at different types of DLC and loot boxes and how that all works and how it's generated more revenue and why. So it's a really good story, which is why I put it on here. It just rubbed me the wrong way. That to me, the ESRB is supposed to be like the protector, the cop, the police of the games industry. And again, not to absolve parents of their responsibility. And I agree 1,000,000% that too many parents in our society rely on pop culture entertainment to be the babysitter of their kids, and they're just lazy parents. I agree with that 1,000,000%. But there are responsible parents out there too who do rely on things like movie ratings and game ratings to at least give them a rough idea of whether their kids should be messing around with stuff. And to me, the ESRB in this case is dropping the ball and letting parents down and society down, in my opinion.
I think that's kind of an idealized view of the ESRB, because as far as I can tell, the ESRB exists to protect the corporate interests of the game industry from legislation they can't control.
That's the ESA. That's what the ESA is supposed to do.
Well, the ESA is as a lobby group for that, but
Right.
I think the ESRB is more interested in protecting the industry from the government than it is from protecting
That's why it
children
was
from the
originally
industry.
formed, exactly why it was originally formed, because it was basically a make-good from the games industry to get the politicians off their backs. But once that happened, the ESA kind of took up the lobbying efforts and actually goes to Congress and sits in and tries to lobby for specific legislation.
I just don't think the ESRB has children's interests in mind.
They don't. That's my point.
Right.
Like,
But I don't think.
they're selling us
I
out.
don't think it's just with loot boxes. I think it's like, there's kind of a grudging sense
In
of
general.
like, well,
I mean, look,
all right, we'll tell you. It's
All
like,
my experiences with the ESRB in 20 years in this industry have been them calling me at game trailers literally every week and saying, hey, you got the wrong rating on this game. You forgot the descriptors on 20 games. Like, that is my sole interaction with the ESRB in 20 years in this industry. To me, they've done nothing constructive other than harass gaming websites and created this weird ESRB council. They're like, hey, here's this logo you can put on your webpage. Yeah, that's going to bring in the traffic. Like, the organization in general is pretty much delusional and serves very little purpose except for this. This is one thing that it can do that it can help, and it is not doing it. It basically just passed the buck on this, and that's why
we'll
it
continue
bothers
to pass the buck until something basically forces them to act, just like every other kind of self-watchdog organization. I mean, the MPAA is the same way.
And it maybe in some ways, maybe it's good if the government does come in and say, hey, what the hell? Like, maybe the ESRB needs a wake-up call at this point. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think if you, for what you want to happen, I think the government is going to have to kind of be like, hey, what's this?
I mean, can you agree that it's not good that 5- and 6-year-old kids are messing around with loot boxes? Can you at least give me that?
I mean, I don't think they are that much.
But you brought it up, that they're getting exposed to this stuff when they're younger, that it's not like an M-rated game.
Well, what I'm describing is, like, at least the kids I know, I mean, obviously not every kid, because I probably know good parents, more or less. But, the kids play games that involve, mostly on their phones, that involve loot boxes sometimes, and they get it's like an allowance. They're like, okay, you can use these crystals, or we'll buy you this many crystals, and you use them on the loot boxes and or whatever in here if you want, and that's it for the week. That's that's kind of it's like an allowance for digital
for gambling
content.
Here's your gambling allowance for the week.
But I see. I mean, I used to use my allowance on, or not allowance, but I would say the money. I spent all my money one week that I'd saved for 2 weeks on Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Was that a gambling addiction? No, but I was like caught up in the fad of it.
But didn't you feel like that same kind of rush though? You have your collection and you're missing like one of them. And you got your allowance or whatever, and you're going to that capsule machine hoping to get that one that you don't have. And so you put it in there, you crank it, you wait for it to come down, you're like, you open the door, and then finally you get that one that you're missing. That feeling of when you get that one that you haven't got yet, that is the same thing you get when you gamble. It's the same thing you get when you're working with loot boxes.
That's just not the thrill of gambling. When I win in gambling is because I got money.
I don't look at it that way at all.
Well, I think that is the difference for them. I mean, I think that's the reason people have like, why it's illegal to do that.
I think people who are addicted to gambling look at it that way.
You mean, wait, what way?
Like I don't have an addiction problem with gambling. So I look at gambling as just entertainment. I spend money, I have fun, all good. Just like going to a club or going to a movie or whatever. The people who are addicted to gambling, the people who are literally drain their bank accounts in Vegas when they go one time a year or whatever, those people do care about the money.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the reward, is you might get rich. That's why people sit there and pull that damn. Well, I guess you don't pull the lever anymore, do you?
Push a button.
Just push the damn button. It doesn't even pay out coins anymore. I'll
Just
tell you,
a ticket.
See, and again, like the money thing is I guess important to me. I don't think I'm a gambling addict because I barely ever do it. But like, one of the coolest things the first time I went to Vegas, and this is showing our age a little bit, one of the coolest things is if you do get a payout from those slot machines, it spits all those coins out, makes that sound.
Yeah.
And then
it still makes a sound.
It makes a sound, but you just get a coupon.
It's just
but
a recording of the
sound,
sound.
right? But like, yeah. So like, for me, it was always the promise of money. It's why you sit there at that. You don't leave that slot machine because it's going to pay out any second now. I mean,
don't get me wrong. If I double down on a blackjack hand and I win it, like, it feels good. You're like, holy crap. But it's not like I sit there and I'm like, I just won $48.21. It's like, I just won.
Right.
That's all that matters.
But that's the distinction between gambling and, blind box stuff. That's at least legally, and at least between, as far as like kind of enforcement of where it's legal and where it's not, is the idea that, maybe that rare Garbage Pail Kid that you needed to complete your collection is worth a lot to you, but everybody can agree that $40 is worth $40.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference, is that money is money.
But see, that's kind of goes against the whole discussion that I wanted to have, though, which is it's not about the money. It's about that feeling that you get and how that feeling becomes addictive. And you start trying to get it in other ways in your life besides just getting a loot box.
Sure, but that can come from a start in a lot of places other than a loot box.
It can, but that doesn't mean that the loot boxes are okay because of that.
It's just weird to me that all of a sudden we need to step in and do something about this, as opposed to kids have been buying blind box items for decades, and it's never been some kind of like moral panic question. Why is this different? And why do I feel like this?
Well, now we're just going in circles, right?
But why does it? But I'm just saying, like, why does this loot box discussion being focused on children, not just you, because this comes from a lot of different angles of people that argue against loot boxes. Why does it feel more like they're arguing that they can't control themselves and they're just worried about children being as bad about it as they are?
Obviously, you're not talking about me. I've never spent a dime on a loot box in my life.
But you see things like Jim Sterling's argument, where like he doesn't care if the loot boxes in Shadow War are not. Are not required to finish the game. He knows they're there, and he's got an addictive personality.
Yeah,
he's going
I agree with you there. I don't understand that argument at all. It's like, I have no self-control, so you suck.
Right.
It's just like saying, why do casinos exist? Now I have to go in and blow my whole paycheck. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, that is pretty much the same thing.
It's a garbage. I mean, that argument makes no sense.
But if you're an addict, I don't know.
Well, you're desperate. You're trying to find any reason to blame but yourself.
Right.
You're trying to find any scapegoat except for it saying, it's my fault, I'm an addict, I have a problem, I can't say no. You're trying to blame it on anyone or anything else.
Like the ESRB.
I guess.
Like, if ESRB had only marked loot boxes in their M ratings, I wouldn't be a gambling addict today. Like, is that the path?
I don't think I understand that.
Blaming the ESRB for not trying to control loot boxes because loot boxes could lead to gambling addiction just seems like the same kind of scapegoating to me. And maybe they're
the only gatekeeper that we've got. They're the only protection we've got in this industry.
Because the gatekeeper is the parents in that regard.
We already talked about this.
Right.
I already said parents most responsibility, but some parents need to rely at least a little bit on those organizations for help.
Like, I think you should know what your kids are playing and what's in them, one way or the
So
other.
if you ever have kids, before you let them play any game or watch any movie, are you going to play the entire game and watch the entire movie before you let them play or watch?
For the most part, yes. I mean,
You'll have already seen them all.
well, that
Yeah,
too.
you already seen them all.
At the very least, when they play a new game, I would stand there and watch and see what's in it.
You're not going to stand there the whole time, though. They're
thought-
playing some
Yeah,
corny
but if
3D
there-
platformer or whatever.
Yeah, but if there's a loot box mechanic in it, that's going to present itself soon enough.
And how would you feel if there was a loot box mechanic in that game?
Well, as long as they don't have access to my credit card, I'm fine with it, because they have to come to me to get any of it. Unless you can buy it with in-game currency, like you can in a lot of them,
Yeah.
which is fine. So would you like to see, at the very least, the ESRB put like loot boxes in the description, or should there be like a icon on the front of the box or something? Or does
I
that
honestly just think loot boxes should only
that
be
e-
in,
yeah,
in
but-
at least at the bottom line T-rated games. Like, to me, loot boxes should never be in E or E10 games.
I don't-
Even
I don't-
T is pushing it a little
I
bit
don't
for
think
me.
you're
but-
losing much by saying that. Like, that seems like, I mean, kids don't have that kind of money to spend anyway, right?
Well, unless their parents
Unless
give
their
it
parents
to
are doing it
Yeah.
for them, right?
them. Yeah.
Ideally.
But then those parents would probably buy them an M-rated game anyway. They're the parents who let kids, like their 5-year-olds, play Grand Theft
True.
Auto. So we got to move on. I think we spent too much time on that. Sam is like, please. Last topic of this week's show, The Evil Within 2. I put up a SIFTD hangout yesterday showing the first... Well, I started recording that about 3 hours in, and I played about an hour. So you guys kind of saw hours 3 through 4 of the game if you watched it on the site. I continued on well past that. I'm about 7 or 8 hours into the game now. Full disclosure, I only played the first one for probably 4 or 5 hours, I'm guessing, something like that. I was not a fan of the first game.
I never played it.
And
I was warned off of it by my horror fan friends.
And I'm somebody who says Resident Evil 4 is one of the best games ever made. Still to this day, I say that.
I would agree with that.
Despite all the other games that have come after it. This game plays exactly like Resident Evil 4. And the last one did pretty much too. But it doesn't have the same kind of special sauce that RE4 did. And it's not just because of the characters that I was endeared to or anything like that, or the IP or anything like that. It just doesn't have that... I don't even know how to describe it. There was just something about Resident Evil 4. The characters, the plot, the way it was all set up, the Ganados.
It was also kind of a revolution in
At
how
that
to
time,
present,
it
how to
was
present
right. At that
kind of
time,
game.
it was completely groundbreaking. And now here we are. I mean, what year was RE4 released even?
2005.
So here we are.
January
yeah.
2005.
Yeah. So here we are 12 years later. And Mikami is still making the same game, essentially. And I will say, like, it does kind of ping that little thing in your brain, that nostalgia gene or whatever the hell it is, that kind of takes you back to this warm, comfortable place. It's almost like a warm blanket that, like, wraps around you. And then they rip it off of you and toss a bucket of blood on you. But it feels old and dated in a lot of ways. But the one thing I will say is, the phrase survival horror is thrown around a lot these days. And really, a lot of games that try to use that moniker aren't really about surviving. This game is 100% about surviving. It is a very challenging game.
And a lot of those, that even if they are about surviving, are not about... Because survival horror, to me, in its classic sense, involves a very heavy kind of inventory resource management angle.
That's exactly what this game is. Like, literally, people always say every bullet counts. In this game, literally, every bullet counts. When you go to craft in this game, you'll use like 3 gunpowders to create 1 bullet. 1 bullet. The first time I crafted, I was like, I must have made like 5 or 10. I go back out to the game, and I look at my weapon. I had crafted 1 handgun bullet. So,
Man.
Oh yeah,
I got a little better at that.
Oh, that's the way this game is, though. Like, every bullet counts in this
It
game.
doesn't take that much gunpowder to make a bullet.
Oh, it's insane.
You're just
Like,
pouring it everywhere over the bench. You can't.
I almost thought that it was like a glitch at first, and then I kept doing it. And I was like, nope, that's just the way the game is.
Is there a way to improve your crafting, like...
Yeah, I mean, there's like a
ratio?
there's a skill tree in the game that you can pretty much buff out like everything. That is obviously one way that it varies a little bit from the older survival horror games. It does have some modern tropes to it, and it is kind of an open world game. It's like you get zapped into the world, and then you have this huge open terrain with lots of buildings and stuff that you can go into. So it feels a lot more open than sort of the linear RE games from the early days, and RE4 for that matter. But everything else is the same. The controls are the same. They aren't really tank controls, but they kind of feel like it. Mm-hmm. There's a quick turnaround like there is in the old RE games. And I will say that the movement in the game does feel a little slow and clunky in a lot of cases. Because you don't get a lot of ammo, you really have to be careful with your shots. Like, there are some times in this game where if an enemy just runs at me and I see another one coming, I just give up. I literally just put the controller down and just let him kill me and just wait to reload, because stealth is another really important element in this game. And the stealth system in the game, it's not like you would expect. Like, you can basically crouch, and that's it. You can't, when you crouch behind an object, you never lock onto the object. So you get put in these weird positions where you're like trying to see an enemy that's around the corner, but you can't really see the enemy without actually rounding the corner and making yourself visible to the enemy. So it relies a lot on stealth, but it doesn't actually give you the mechanics to kind of make good with it. But
man, that's annoying.
It is. It is. But the trade-off for that is the tension in the game is ratcheted up like 100 times. Like, I'll be scared, and there's some other name that they use for them, but really the enemies in this, they're frickin' zombies. So I'm just going to call them zombies. But there are times where just like one zombie puts you on edge. Because literally, if they get a hold of you and like bite your neck and then hit you with like one melee attack, you die. And you have to start over. And the checkpoints in the game are pretty generous. Usually if it's like a major fight, like they'll just spawn you right back where you were before. I think a lot of times they spawn you right where you picked up your last item in a lot of cases. So you never have to backtrack a lot. And there is a save system in this. They kind of use a typewriter system. But it also auto-saves. I think it's more for just like vanity and for fans' sake more than anything else.
Yeah, sometimes you want a hard save.
Yeah, I guess. To me, it just seems like more of a nod to, yeah, I'm the guy who created Resident Evil. And I will say, I still do hard save. I mean, I still do it.
Well, making it a typewriter, yeah.
It's not a typewriter, though. No, I'm just saying there's like these, it's just like a...
Oh, it's just the same mechanic.
It's just the same mechanic.
And limited, is it limited?
No. Yeah, like, again...
You remember that? Because that was part of the survival horror thing, was you had the ink ribbons, and if you ran out of that, you couldn't save anymore.
Yeah, you don't need the ink ribbons or anything like that. That's why I'm saying it's really just kind of a nod to like say, hey, I'm Mikami, and I made all these games that you like. I've seen a lot of people in reviews railing on the story in this game. I'm not that... I mean, I'm 7-8 hours in. I don't know how long the game is. But I don't find the story to be terrible. I mean, you stack it up against other Mikami games, and it's pretty much right on par. It's basically a continuation of the first one. You play as Sebastian, who used to be a cop. After the first game, they all think he's crazy, so they kick him off the force. He turns into an alcoholic again. I guess that means falling off the wagon or whatever. And his former partner comes and says, hey, how you doing? He's like, oh, not so good. You know, my daughter's dead. My wife's dead. And she's like, oh, your daughter's actually not dead. There's this corporation who has your daughter, and your daughter has special powers, and they're using her to power what is essentially the Animus. This game just basically rips off Assassin's Creed. And so,
it's funny how that series has resonated in Japan so much.
It is, yeah. I just watched the Assassin's Creed movie the other day. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but still terrible.
Surprisingly little stuff in the past.
There's so many incontinuities in that, where like someone gets stabbed, and then they cut to the next shot, and he's not stabbed. Just stuff like that all the way through it.
I think that movie went through a lot of last-minute shuffling.
Probably reshoots, I don't know. But anyway, so I don't think the story in this is all that terrible. I mean, maybe something happens at the end that makes it all seem completely hokey or pointless or whatever. But, and essentially what you do is they're using your daughter to power this virtual world to create this small town, and you have to go into the small town to try to rescue your daughter. And it turns into this...
So you're in a virtual world?
Yes.
Okay.
You're in the Animus, essentially.
Right.
It's this world that's fabricated from people's minds.
So that's what, with all the fading in and out stuff, it was from the trailers at E3 and all that.
Yep, that's what it was. And so you go into this fake world to try to save your daughter, and it turns into this wild goose chase where there's this, essentially a serial killer who has taken your daughter, and you're following him, tracking him, trying to find him so you can save your daughter, and then... I mean, I guess the story is kind of dumb because it's like, well, is the daughter real? Like, can you take the real person out of this fake world even though she's not using the machine that you're using? I don't know. It's good enough for a game like this is what I'm saying. But a lot of people are literally saying, like, don't buy the game because of the story, and I would not agree with that. Game is gory as all get out. I mean, hopefully we'll see some clips here. Like, eventually I died in one of these.
You can see that there already.
Well, wait. Yeah, here's actually perfect timing. Right here we go. So I'll just pause and let you guys watch this.
Oh, hey there.
Perfect timing on the clip there. Yeah,
I mean that's some classic Resident Evil 4 too. I mean, like Leon died some pretty terrible ways.
Yep, and I'm sure there will be, probably by Monday, there will be compilations of death scenes from this game. And they are good, they are gruesome, and you can definitely see kind of Mikami's influence coming in through there. There's lots of item collecting, just like RE. There's lots of crafting and loot stuff. You can craft health, you can craft bullets, you can improve your weapons. You have a crossbow, and you can create different bolts for that. Like, you have electric bolts, and like you can use that with water to sort of expand on its capabilities and inflict more damage on enemies. Like, there's one boss that I fight. I found like a hydrant that I opened up, and then I ran into a boss. I'm like, oh, well, I have this electric bolt. I'm going to lure the boss back to this water, and as soon as he steps in the water, I'm going to shoot the electric bolt into the water, and I did, and it worked beautifully. So that is another part of this game that I really love, is that if you experiment with kind of the tools that the game gives you, it gives you that latitude to kind of use the elements in other parts of the game world to be better at the game.
A horror game where things make sense?
Yeah,
that's
a little bit.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, so it rewards you for experimenting and trying different things, which I like. It's not like a rigid, like linear game like you maybe would expect from something like this. So, and here you can see literally a wild goose chase after your daughter.
So with all the open stuff, do you feel that has trouble balancing against the limited resources at all?
Yes, the game is hard, man. Like, I've died. Like, I didn't die for the pacing in the game is not great, because I literally didn't even come close to dying for the first 3 hours, and then like a switch just flipped. And essentially the switch flipped when I got into the open world, because the zombies are like everywhere. And literally, it's impossible to kill more than like 2 at a time. You just can't. Like, the aim is too slow. It takes too long to reload your weapons when you first start out and you haven't leveled up yet. And like, if 1 or 2 guys come after you, like, you're just dead. It's like I said. Like, as soon as they started running at me, I just put the controller down. But eventually, you get to a place where you can increase, like, your stamina. You have a stamina meter in the game. So if you run too much or you try to use too many melee attacks, you're basically just left completely incapacitated. But eventually you get to a place where your stamina is boosted up enough that you can run away from enemies. And then it gets kind of comical, because the way the enemies are, they'll run and they'll get right up to you, but they have to stop to swing. So when they do that, you keep running, and they never hit you. So it turns into this weird thing. Sometimes I will spin around and look behind me, and there's like 5 zombies all running after me. And then they stop to attack, and that gives you enough time to get far enough away that their attacks don't land. And so once I discovered that, like, I started cheesing the game a little bit, because there's also, the way the enemies are set up, they patrol areas. And if you get outside of the area, they just quit. They just give up and walk back. And then there's the whole, just find a door to go into. You know, if they're chasing you, go in a building, chase over. So there are ways to kind of cheese the game. And because the game is so difficult, you have to kind of use the cheese to get through the game. At least I've had to. The damage the guns do, like the handgun when you first use it, it takes like 2 headshots to kill every enemy, or like 5 shots to the body. The aiming I thought was a little squirrely. It took me a long time to kind of get a handle on the manual aiming. So much so that I eventually went into the menus and turned on the aim assist. I started with it off, went back and turned it on after a while, because I just got frustrated with trying to land shots. I just didn't feel like I was good with aiming. So, despite all this, and with all this said, I'm enjoying the game. I've had a really good time with it. It seems like the game is massive. I'm 7 hours into it, and I have really just started to scratch the surface on like upgrading my character and all my weapons and everything. It is a big, big game. And in all honesty, it's probably the closest thing you're going to get to Resident Evil. We both played Resident Evil 7. Great game, scary game, but wasn't really so much a Resident Evil game. This is really it. No surprise the guy who created the franchise would be the one who kind of continued on with that design.
How would you compare the story in this to the story in Resident Evil 7?
Well, the story in Resident Evil 7 was really good for the first like 5 hours, but then it just fell apart at the end. So,
obviously very different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
this is a lot more sci-fi.
It is.
Going on.
I would say this is a little more corny and hokey.
Also kind of a Mikami trademark.
It is, yeah. And I mean, Resident Evil 7 kind of got there eventually. Like, have you finished Resident Evil 7?
No, but not everybody who watched might have finished it either.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to spoil plot details, but the last couple hours, it kind of goes towards camp territory a little bit. This one's just kind of there the whole time. Which, again, Mikami, not that big of a surprise. But, yeah, you're right. It is a lot more sci-fi, but it's still just as gory as most Resident Evil games. So it's not like it skimps on that. And the creature designs are great. They're scary. The sound design for the creatures is awesome. Hearing creature sound scares the crap out of you. Like, you think you're safe, and you hear just, like, this really low... And you're like, oh, no, like, where is he? Because literally, like, one enemy can kill you. So you're paranoid of, like, getting caught in a place where you get, like, caught in a corner or something like that with an enemy, because it's really hard to get away from him. And the movement's kind of slow and clunky, and it's one of those games where the control limitations make you really nervous, and it helps build tension. I think it's up to you to decide whether that's good or not. I think every person's different on whether they think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that is something I definitely feel while playing this game. The open world, it definitely adds the tension, adds the scares to it. It's not like you can just clear out an area and be like, okay, I'm good. Everything behind me is safe, and everything in front of me is danger. The game doesn't work that way at all. Sometimes you'll go and pick up items on the ground, and there'll be a zombie underneath a car that'll just grab you and like bite your leg and drag you down and kill you instantly. So it always keeps you on your toes and keeps you wondering. Here you're seeing the communicator, which is this little like walkie-talkie. And basically what it does is it picks up signals from other people, and then it tells you where to go. And then once you kind of lock into those signals, it'll put a waypoint on your map. And kind of tell you what's there and why you need to go there. There's a great map system. You can set waypoints, so you're never kind of wandering around, wondering where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do. There's distraction. You can see I just tried to use a bottle right there to get the zombies to move out, so I can get in behind them. There are insta-kills, stealth kills, but in the early going, they're really hard to do because you can see how slow you move. So I'm trying to do a stealth kill here. And eventually I give up, see what happened? And eventually I'm like, I'm not going to make it in time. And then he turns around, and then I run away. Like, this is the game in a nutshell right here, at least in the early going. I'm sure eventually your crawl, you can boost up your crawl, and it goes faster and stuff like that. So, hey, if you're looking for a great horror game to play over Friday the 13th or for Halloween, which is coming up very quickly, I recommend this. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think if...
Do you have to have played the first one?
No. Like I said, I played the first 4 hours of the first one before I gave up, and I'm not having any problem keeping up with this one or understanding what's going on. So it's a AAA horror game, which we don't get that much of these days. There aren't a lot of franchises left. And so the timing is good. It came out in October on Friday the 13th. It just came out today. It's out there.
And if the past is any indication, Bethesda needs all the help it can get
with
things that are not Skyrim or Fallout.
Seriously. So. But I'm enjoying it, and I think it's great. It came out at the perfect time, Halloween. Everyone's kind of in the spooky mood, wanting to watch scary movies and stuff like that. And it is spooky, and it definitely has a great atmosphere. I think its mechanics help build some of the atmosphere more than the actual atmosphere itself, but there's something to be said for that. So I think it's hard to recommend when we were talking earlier about those 3 games coming out on October 27th.
Yeah.
Would I recommend it over any of those games? Probably not. Would I recommend it over South Park that I'm playing right now? I can't say. You'll find that out next week. So
certainly saying the title doesn't make you grin as much as the South Park title does.
No, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, this game wasn't meant to be anything like South Park, and it's not. So, yeah, I mean, I think overall, Mikami used to be kind of like a god to me. Especially after RE4. I always looked up to him and thought he was one of the best designers in the world. And then RE4 came out, and I'm like, oh, he is one of the best designers in the world. His stature with me has definitely fallen off over the last decade or so. His output has not sort of kept up the standard.
Well, nobody remains on top of the world forever.
Miyamoto's done a pretty good job.
True, but he's got an army working for him.
He does. I mean, look, there are some...
Also, Miyamoto does so many different things. Mikami kind of has the one thing.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is that, for me, around the RE4 era, Mikami was kind of getting in that rarefied air for me. I was like, yeah, he does horror stuff, but, man, it's so good, and it's so bleeding edge, and so different, and clever, and it turns out that he wasn't really quite in that class. And there's only 5 or 6 guys who are, but for me, he was getting into that rarefied air at that point, and he just never kind of...
He also do Devil May Cry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he disappeared, too. Like, he kind of just went off the radar for a while and just recently came back. So maybe he's trying to find his chops again. I don't know. But if you like horror games, this is probably going to be one of your best bets for 2017, to be honest with you. I do love horror games, and I play almost all of them. And
Certainly sounds if you like the old-style survival horror concept, this is the only game in town.
It is kind of the only game in town. I mean, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 are getting ready to come out for Switch. Neither of those games are as good as this. So don't buy Revelations. Buy this instead. I will say that much. So, and if you like horror games, you don't have a lot of choice anymore.
Right. And I mean, it's at least it's not like kind of like things like Outlast 2 or like those where it's more like running from things and.
Oh, you run.
You are running from things, but it's not as much as like. Managing inventory is more of a walking simulator with threats.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And this is much more of an old school, like
action-oriented. Yeah, you get more of an RE vibe from this than you do from kind of those indie.
I don't know if I feel the need to go back to that, but I appreciate that they did it.
Some people do that. Some people love that stuff, and this will definitely give you that vibe. So, I recommend it for old RE fans, folks. It's time for our trailer of the week, and it is a trailer for a game that I think it was just like a month and a half ago we had a trailer for this game, but I am pushing this game on you. I try to use GameFace as a vehicle to get you guys to check out games that are different, unique, that are pushing the envelope a little bit, and the more I look at this game, the more I think this is kind of one of those ones to keep an eye on.
Is it your new rhyme?
What? My new rhyme?
Is your new rhyme? You're looking forward to rhyme for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah. Funny how that worked out. It is a
R-I-M-E, not.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute, a rap? I'm like, I didn't work on anything, but maybe I can freestyle.
I need a freestyle? Like
we call it Eminem. He's right outside. This is a trailer for a game called Echo, and essentially in this game, it's a stealth game where the enemy is yourself, and your main character basically gets cloned, and then you have to avoid clones of yourself, and they mimic your behavior. So the game watches what you do as you play, and then tries to create a clone that does exactly what you do, and then you have to go against your own nature to try to succeed at the game. I think it's a crazy, unique concept, and here is this gameplay trailer.
Can you see any structures on the planet?
It's all one big structure. Planet-wide, all the way to the core.
I'll be damned. Are you getting all this?
I'm with you.
It seems familiar, somehow. What is this?
That's you, N.
They're everywhere. They do what I do. They learn from me.
Foster is dead. He died more than a century ago.
I can bring him back. Foster? Are you doing this?
I remember that game now. I didn't recognize it when you mentioned it, but then
It's
when
a very
it started
generic
running,
name, but I highly recommend going on SIFTD and checking it out and following it. So some of you may not know, but you can follow games on SIFTD. just go to his game page, click the gear next to its title, and click follow. And then anytime something new is released for this game, it'll be put at the top of your SIFT so you can't miss it. Already tons of media for the game on the site. Go check it out. We don't have a ton of time, so we can't answer a ton of questions. Also, we're starting to sort of go through our Patreon rewards right now. And over this weekend, I will be doing Ask Shane Anything. And there are already literally like 50 questions for Ask Shane Anything. So I'm not going to burn a ton of time doing Q&A here. Plus, we're way, way over for this episode. So we'll answer a couple here. And here's one I'm glad somebody asked. The Abram, what do you guys think about IGN buying Humble Bundle? I wanted to put it in the show, but it was too late. And like I already had everything done.
Not enough detail yet.
Yeah.
Really. Well, I guess it was a good ride.
For who?
For a while,
Both.
for people who liked Humble Bundle for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they said that like it's going to be,
independent
as
or
long as it's
whatever.
going all right, it's still no reason to change anything. Like, okay, I mean, I've heard that before. We've heard that before when we were bought by various entities back in the day. And if you have any doubts about that, ask them how Direct-to-Drive is going.
Yeah.
Because IGN bought them and said roughly the same thing, and that didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
I love Humble Bundle, and I'm very concerned about this.
Oh, look, I love Humble Bundle, and I love IGN. Like,
Right.
IGN's been around forever. Without IGN, our industry probably wouldn't continue to exist the way it does. But I think this is a huge mistake by IGN. I get why they're doing it. Financially, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Humble Bundle is a great company that you feel good supporting because a lot of the money that it generates goes to charity, and I totally get that. But this is a huge conflict of interest for IGN. You can't build your editorial backbone on evaluating products and then sell the products. You can't do it because then it starts to call into question of, oh, well, they gave this game a high score and now suddenly there's a sale on that game on Humble Bundle. You just can't allow those questions to even enter your stratosphere when you're trying to build strong editorial.
Even if it never happens.
Even if it never happens. Just the question that it's there is just, it's bad. And look, I'm not even going to begin to know what happened. Look, the editorial team could have maybe gone to management and been like, don't do this. You're going to ruin our editorial integrity. They could. I have no idea what happened over there.
You can't forget that IGN is a giant company.
It is. It has become a gigantic company. It has an office here in LA that's probably twice the size that Game Trailers ever was. Mm-hmm. Not kidding. Like, they have an office here that's like the size of our G4 office almost, minus like the studios or whatever. So IGN has become a behemoth. And that doesn't change anything as far as what I'm talking about.
No, but it's just like one of those things where, like, if that one part of this giant behemoth decides it wants to do a thing, the other side's may not have input on it.
Very little sway on it. So maybe IGN's editorial did go out and say, hey, this is a bad idea. It's going to jeopardize our editorial integrity and make people
They do seem to be
question.
trying to get out ahead of the idea of like, oh, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. But it's like, well, then what's the point? I mean,
Well, they want the money.
Right, they want the money. But, like, it's just, I mean, I know the people that do stuff over there, and I'm sure it will not impact. Like but like you say,
you just don't want
can
to
ask
even
the
have
question.
that doubt. Yeah.
You can ask the question, and that counts for something.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because certainly we've been on the receiving end of a lot of acquisitions where many statements were made about how, oh, we bought it because we love it and we don't want it to change because we want to get, and like within a year,
it all changes.
It was all different.
Well, maybe now GameSpot will buy GameStop, and everybody who switches up those names will stop being wrong forever.
Yeah, I just don't have to worry about it anymore.
Let's see, maybe one more. I'm sorry, guys, but we're way over time here. Drunken Elvis Shane will be working for IGN in 6 months. Highly doubtful. Vox91, given the way the big budget game market is changing, do you think we could ever see developers make sense of games with a specific style as opposed to having a style tied to a franchise?
I don't know.
I'm not sure I follow that question.
I think I get it. It's kind of like series of games with specific style, so like kind of like an anthology series where like it's not maybe named the same, but the company has like a house style.
Like Housemarque?
Yeah, kind of like that. Or like, I mean, like Rare, I guess, where everything's kind of got a look, but, something as different as Banjo-Kazooie and Conker both kind of have a similar house style to them.
But what's the question, though?
Could they ever do that?
Who?
A big budget company? I feel like that's too, not risky, but I feel like that's too, like a big budget company for a big budget project would see that as not lacking market continuity. I think you wouldn't be able to be sure you could message to people that these two things were related in some way. But I think companies do have developers at least do tend to have a house style if they work in a particular kind of animation. And
I think most studios just have a house style, period.
Yeah.
Some of them are more overt than others. Housemarques is like blatant.
For sure.
It's like Rescue the Humans, Voxels, whatever. But some of the other studios do it a little more covertly.
Yeah.
Like they'll just
Capcom's kind
hide
of
with
come up
Easter
with something
eggs
like
and
that.
stuff like that. Yeah.
And then you've got like Insomniac, I would say, doesn't have one. Insomniac can do stuff as diverse as Ratchet and Clank all the way up to Spider-Man. But
yeah.
I think that does happen, but I don't know if that's something that like a big budget studio would pursue intentionally. That feels like it would be risky, and those big companies don't like risky.
No, for sure.
I would like to see. I mean, that sounds like an interesting idea.
Let's see if we can find one more, because I don't feel like we did a good job with that one.
How about Justin Horman? What is a game that you find very difficult and one in which you often find yourself failing but enjoy playing it so much you find yourself coming back to it often?
Cuphead. Perfect. I've been trying to get through that game ever since the stream, and I maybe make it through one level every time I play it.
Mm-hmm. I would say online Street Fighter.
No,
I am a fine Street Fighter player.
You're
overall.
a very good Street Fighter player.
Not if I go online. I'm
Yeah.
not. I mean, I get destroyed on. Like, as soon as I hit ranked, like forget it. Like it's over. Like on Street Fighter V, maybe I win like 1 out of 10 matches if I'm
it's
lucky.
crazy how good
like,
some people
really
are.
good.
It's really nuts.
That's kind of like my fighting game limbo. Is I'm like good enough that I like casuals don't like playing with me, but I'm not good enough to play with the really good people. So I just sort of like sit there and like don't play it. I don't know.
I don't even bother playing fighting games online anymore. It's total destruction.
Yeah, it's sometimes, and it's like the one times I do win, it's usually because I get matched up with someone that clearly doesn't know what they're doing, and there's no satisfaction in that.
Yeah.
So.
Like I'll play against people if they're like, they'll message me and say, "Hey, you want to play some Street Fighter or whatever?" Then I'll jump on and I'll play. But just jumping into the servers and being like, "Match me up with somebody," forget it.
But yeah, periodically I will go online and bang my head against that wall. But that's probably what I'd pick for the answer to that.
All right, it's time to wrap up some more Patreon stuff. It's time to finally give our $30 tier their reward. Bring it up, Sam. Everyone who's contributed $30 a month or more to our Patreon, it's time for you to get your credit with the Give Me Credit reward. I'm going to share every single person who has hit that level or higher on our Patreon. And then going forward, everybody who's mentioned by name on the show will be added to a credit roll at the end of every episode. But we will always announce, me personally, I will always announce every new person who joins that tier or higher. So let's go. Thank you to each and every one of you from the very bottom of my heart. Ryan, Willie Cecil, Ash Westar, and I hope I don't get too many of these wrong. I know I'm going to. I'm going to do my best. Cubes to Camel, Jonathan and Amy Alconis, Jesper, Daniel Parsons, Pain of Demise, Tom Duvac. What's that one? Eodel?
Yodel game? Yeah, I think so.
Yodel, yay! Yodel Gaming. Kevin Rafa, Ryan Anderson, Sven Wolfenman, Edgardo Adano. I like that name. That sounds like a professional wrestler's name or something. Emmanuel Wood, Justin Horman. What's up, Justin? Sir Knits a Lot. That person likes to knit. That's great. Royden, Alan Sheriff, Joshua P. Morgan, Brent Phillips, our very own Brent. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you kicking into the cause. Nick Free, Tony Barrera, Casey Moore, Juan Iobo, Terrence Eddy, Sound Wizard, Ali T, Jeff Lynn, Doug DeShazer, Michael S. Clark, Jesse Riusalo, I'm doing my best, Matthias Norman, Anthony Gale, Evan Piotrowski, the stand user, I believe, Alex Neveau, George Chumakov, Steven Insler, Vladimir Mikolavsky. I think I did okay with that one.
That was all right. Yeah.
Murat Yilmaz, Nicholas D'Arenzo, one of my buddies from the Philly days. Thanks, Nick. Sean Eipert, Charles Overbeck, Canaran, Daniel Rosencrantz, David Bairday. Is that Bairday or Bird?
I would guess Bear Day, but I don't know.
I got it right the first time. David Collier, Freeze Frame Rate, Simon Habib, Abdul Fattah Nakiti, Andre Sweet, Mark Major, Marcus Benavides, and Francis Flores. You guys are all awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. You guys are awesome. I should also add that we have been doing the random drawings for our Patreon. So the first contestant for Beat Shane has been selected, and I'm not going to spoil who it is. We have the first gameplay session set up for next week, either on Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be a big surprise. Obviously, our patrons will get access to that first, followed by everybody else, but eventually everyone will get to watch it. And we also tried to select the first person from the co-host tier, but that person was unavailable to come on the show, and we're trying to get them. I think they may have a little bit of stage fright as well. So we're trying to get them to maybe just record their question on their cell phone and send us the file, but all that stuff is in the works. It's been actually really exciting to work on all this Patreon stuff over the last week or so and kind of sorting it all out. So more stuff to come, but that's all in the works right now. So yeah, I think that's it. Oh yeah, we have a sponsor. Extra Turns. ExtraTurns.com. I wonder how they got that URL, actually.
That seems like it would have been gone already.
Long time ago. Good job. Maybe they paid for it, though. ExtraTurns.com. Your games deserve more. There's so many stores and sites that will charge you 10, maybe 15% or more for the privilege of selling a used game. I almost have this memorized now, by the way. We charge $0. They charge $0. I always say we, but it's really they, right? Mm-hmm. They charge $0. ExtraTurns.com is a brand new marketplace being built from the ground up so you can sell your games, collectibles, electronics, and memorabilia. Not only will they beat their competitors' commission in every category important to you, but they will also make exchanging your used games commission-free. You get 100% of the value of your collection. Sign up for the pre-launch and share us on social media to be entered to win an SNES Classic this holiday season. ExtraTurns.com. Go register, people. Support our sponsors. Really appreciate it. So that's it. This is this the longest episode ever?
I don't know. When did we start?
This is only 3 hours.
Oh, this is just 3 hours.
Oh.
3 and a quarter.
That's all it is. Again, I want to thank all our patrons for helping with us. If you're watching this on YouTube after it's been up for our patrons, please consider supporting us. If you watch Pactor Factory, you watch GameFace, this stuff doesn't come for free. So
yeah, you should add a tier on a donation tier on Patreon where if you get to a certain level, you can then dictate that we argue about loot boxes again.
I think some people are going to want that. Some people are going to want to donate money to this so that we never talk about loot boxes ever again.
Oh, that's a good one. like a warring donation thing.
That's actually a pretty good idea. I don't know if loot boxes are going to do it, but maybe we can find something else.
You could just call it "Let Them Fight."
But thanks for all your support, everyone. You guys have been great, especially the people who are on our stream every week and the on-site supporters of SIFTD. You guys have been awesome throughout this whole process. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great weekend. GameFace is up and out.